Hello everyone, welcome to What If Luffy Died Fighting Akainu and Went to Highschool DxD Part 2. Before we start, please go support Javier Ramirez 042 for writing that awesome fanfic. Now let's begin. This is the translated version I made. There will be some wrong he or she calling here because it's translated, so let me clear this. Luffy is a male in this story. Chapter 7. The game begins. The day of the game had arrived and Luffy was preparing to go with the Gremory group to the dimension where the game would be held. They were in the club room with the Mugiwaras, who would watch the game from there, and Grafia, who would send them to the game. Good luck, Luffy, I know you can win, Nami told him, giving him a loving kiss on the lips. Thank you, Nami, I won't let you down, Luffy said with a smile. My love, show that fool how powerful you are, Hancock said, kissing him too. I will do it that way, Hancock, he said. Luffy, you better beat that bastard, or I'll kick you to the end of the world, Sanji shouted furiously. Don't worry, Sanji, I won't let him beat me, said Luffy. Remember to use your haki to defeat him, Zoro said seriously. I remember, said Luffy. Then, Grafia looked at Riaz and said, Riaz-sama, Mao Lucifer will be watching his game. Riaz opened her eyes for a while and then said, so Ani-sama will see me. All the Mugiwaras looked at her surprised and Nami asked, who is her brother? He is the current Lucifer and one of the 4 demon kings. The Mao searches Lucifer-sama, Grafia replied naturally. Demon king. Everyone shouted without being able to believe it. That's right, and he will watch the game along with his parents and the top brass of the underworld. They will be waiting for a big game, so they will have some pressure. Grafia said seriously. No problem, I'll give them a show they'll never forget, said Luffy with a big smile. Grafia smiled and created the transportation circle to send them. The game will start soon, go to the transportation circle to go to the game field, she said. The group nodded and after saying goodbye to the Mugiwaras, they disappeared in the circle towards the game. In the game dimension, Luffy opened his eyes and found himself back in the club room, but seeing that his crew was not there, he understood what was happening. I see, they copied the academy for the game. It's like those virtual reality games, he said, looking out the window. Suddenly, they heard Grafia's voice. Welcome to the game between the Gremory group led by Riaz Gremory and the Phoenix group led by Razor Phoenix. My name is Grafia and I will be the referee in this game. The game field is an exact copy of Ku Academy, with the occult club room as Riaz-sama's base and the school building as Razor-sama's base. They will have 10 minutes to plan strategies before starting the game and going to fight. When Grafia's voice was no longer heard, Riaz said, very well, let's plan our strategy for the game. They all nodded and met with her to find out what they would do. Meanwhile, with the Mugiwaras, they watched the game through a magic transmission circle. It seems that first they must plan a strategy and they have 10 minutes. Nami said, drinking alcohol while she watched the Gremory group on the monitor. That's enough time, you can create a good strategy in at least 8 minutes. Sanji said, coming from the kitchen with more snacks. But I'm worried that Luffy will have to fight with women, since that could slow him down. Usopp said worriedly and eating popcorn. Don't worry, big nose. Luffy is capable of fighting women because he demonstrated it on my island when he faced my sisters, said Hancock, taking a glass of wine. That's right, who should be targeting that fried chicken, and I know he will be able to get through all those women without problems. Nami said, looking at the screen with a smile. 10 minutes later, Luffy and Kaneko head to the gym for Ria's plan, and upon arriving, Luffy said, he detected 4 girls inside with my observation haki. So do I, Kaneko said seriously. But a female voice from inside shouted to them, come out, we already know you are here. They both went out to find the 4 girls in the gym and the one with the bun hairstyle, he said, look who we have here. The stupid one who challenged Razor-sama and the little girl. I'm in luck, Razor-sama has promised whoever manages to defeat you a wish that he could fulfill for us. But the Mugiwara group, Motherbaker, how dare he do that to Luffy? Nami shouted angrily. Wonderful play. He has made Luffy the main target of his entire team and now he will be hunted throughout the game, Zoro said with a frown. Damn son of a bitch, I'll kick him to the end of the world for such audacity, Sanji shouted with flaming anger. Let's hope Luffy can get over this, Hancock said with great concern. Back in the game, Luffy just rolled his eyes at the girl and said, do you think that affects me? I have been the target of marines, pirates and even the world. None of you will have a chance against me. The girl gritted her teeth and lunged at Luffy to hit him while she screamed, be quiet, I will defeat you and get that wish. But she was hit by Kaneko with a kick that threw her away from Luffy and her little girl told her, leave this woman to me, Luffy-senpai. You go for the other 3. Luffy smiled and left Kaneko with the panda-eared girl to focus on the other 3. He recognized Mira among them and smiled at her. Shishishi, it seems we meet again, he said with amusement. Mira turned her cane and said, that's right, and now I will defeat you so that Razor-sama doesn't continue being angry with me. Hearing that, Luffy looked at her angrily and said, the king who gets angry with his nakamas and hates them, he does not deserve to be a king. Mira gritted his teeth and lunged towards hers, shouting, "Don't talk like that about Razor-sama, my loyalty is only his." Luffy looked at her with furious eyes and covering her fist with haki, he said, "That is a blind loyalty without reason. Gomu Gomu no pistol." He launched a pistol blow that destroyed her staff and sent her into a wall in defeat. Luffy watched as she disappeared in blue lights and heard Graphia's voice saying, "From the Razor team, a pawn retires." Luffy smiled at his first victory in the game and then looked at the twin girls. "Apparently you are still there," he said with his usual smile. Both twins looked at him with a demonic smile and, taking out some chainsaws from who knows where, they rushed towards him to cut him into pieces. "Get ready to end up in little pieces in our hands," one shouted. "That's right, and Razor-sama will grant each of us a wish by eliminating you," the other shouted. "But the Mugiwaras. But what kind of girls carry chainsaws?" Usopp shouted, scared. "I think they," Zoro said calmly. "I'm worried that oaf has some girls in his harem." "How disgusting," Nami said with disgust. "It's like those horrible men I hate," Hancock said. "Look, it looks like Luffy is going to act," Yamato shouted, eating meat. Back to the game, the two girls were about to cut Luffy, but he put his haki-covered arms and blocked the chainsaws without taking any damage. "Shishishi, it won't work on me," Luffy said. They both looked at him in horror, and Luffy threw them like the third and then attacked them with a rain of blows. "Gomu Gomu no Gatling," shouted the attacking one. After a round of blows, both disappeared in blue light and you could hear, "From Razor's team, 2 pawns retire." Luffy smiled at that and looked at Kaneko to see her with only a few destroyed clothes, but with her opponent on the ground. "Well done, Kaneko," he said with a smile. Kaneko looked away to hide his blush and said, "Come on, we have to get out of here." So, they both left the gym and at that moment, a powerful lightning bolt fell on him. Luffy looked up at the sky and saw a certain person. "Wow, Akaino's rays can be more dangerous than Nami's," he said. Akainu was in the sky, flying with her demon wings, while he licked his lips with lust. "But the Mugiwaras. Akainu Chuan, send me your rays of love and I will gladly accept them," Sanji shouted like a whirlpool. "Incredible, its rays are so powerful and are capable of destroying a building." "I don't know if I can create rays as powerful as hers," Nami said impressed. "She has class when attacking, you can see that she is not just any woman," Hancock said respectfully. "Fufufu, my new friend wants to play, everyone better take care of themselves," Robin said with a smile. Back in the game, Luffy saw something with her observation haki and removed Kaneko from an attack that was aimed at her. "Are you okay, Kaneko?" he asked her worried. "I'm fine, Luffy-senpai." "What was that?" the little girl asked, looking around. Luffy looked at the sky and said, "She is the culprit." Above them was Yubaluna with an evil smile and she told them, "Oh my, it seems that the hot eye was able to anticipate my move." "How would he have done it?" Luffy smiled at him and said, "I won't tell you and I recommend that you be careful in heaven." Yubaluna looked at Akainu, who was looking at her with a sadistic smile and said, "The priestess of lightning. It will be a pleasure to face you." Ara, I will make you pay for trying to hurt my pretty cowhide," Akainu said with lightning around her. And so, the two launched into a queen's fight to the death. Then, they heard Graphia's voice again. "From Razor's group, 3 pawns retire." Luffy looked at Kaneko and said, "Looks like Kiba did it. Let's go to the park to meet him." Kaneko nodded and like that, they both went to the park to continue the game. Chapter 8. Dragon Pirate vs Phoenix. The game continued, and while Luffy headed to the park with Kaneko, Riaz along with Asia headed to the academy building to confront Razor. Already in the park, they met Kiba, who smiled when he saw them. "It's good to see that they have managed to get here," he said. Luffy smiled, but felt something with his observation haki and said, "Get ready. We have company." The blonde girl with a drill ponytail appeared before them, looking at them with an arrogant smile. "You're that girl who talked to Nami at the meeting, the fried chicken sister," Luffy said, pointing at her. "Juju, that's right. My name is Ravel Phoenix and I am one of Oni-sama's bishops." "Now, I have your opponents ready to fight," said the now named Ravel with a smile. Then, a girl in armor and a big sword rushed towards Kiba to fight. "My pleasure, my name is Karaman and I will be your opponent, Knight of the Gremory group," the girl said with a smile. Kiba smiled and holding his sword tightly, said, "My name is Kiba Udo. Nice to meet you, Karaman-san." But the Mugiwaras. Zoro paid a lot of attention to this fight and Nami asked him, "You trained him, right?" Zoro gave him a smile and replied, "That's right and I can say that he is a good learner." Back in the game, as the two swordsmen engaged in their sword battle, Ravel looked at Kaneko and said, "For you cat, I have reserved 2 very special girls." He snapped his fingers and some catgirls rushed to Kaneko to fight. "Naya, you will fight against us, Naya," said one. "Naya, you smell strangely like us, Naya," said the other. Kaneko gritted her teeth and began an intense battle against the 2 catgirls. Meanwhile, Ravel looked at Luffy and said, "I must admit that I am interested in you. You were able to stand up to my brother just for the girl you love and you are fighting just the same for Riaz-sama. You act like a kind of hero, those great characters that caught my attention as a child." Luffy smiled at him and said, well, in my life I have said that I am not a hero, since they are about sharing meat with others, and since I love meat, I don't want to share it. However, I have been able to realize that I am willing to be a hero only for the women I love, since I am willing to share my food with them. Therefore yes, you can call me a hero for those who conquered my heart. But the Mugiwaras, hahaha, that's true. Luffy has shared his food with me on some occasions, and that's why I consider him my hero. Nami said with a beautiful smile. That idiot. You don't realize how easy it is for him to make a woman fall in love with you, Sanji said with a smile. Back in the game, Ravel looked at him with a small blush, and with a small cough, he said, big words, and that's why I will put them to the test. Isabella, it's your turn. The woman of great beauty appeared before Luffy with a mask covering part of her face. My name is Isabella and I come to face you, she said, showing her fists. Seeing this, Luffy couldn't help but be attracted to her. Another type of women that he liked were those who fought like him, with their fists, and this woman was his type as well as beautiful. He smiled mischievously at her and said, of course, Isabella-chan. I will give you a battle like no other. But the Mugiwaras, did he call her Chan? Sanji asked surprised. It just can't be, that girl falls within the scope of Luffy's tastes, Nami said with a sigh. What do you mean, Nami-san? Brook asked curiously. Luffy talked to me and told me about his taste in women. His greatest taste is red-haired women like me and Rias, as well as black-haired women like Hancock, Robin and Akainu. However, another pleasure of his is women who fight with their fists. He says that he has had fantasies about women of that type, where he has a fist fight with her, and in the end they end up in bed, Nami explained with another sigh. Ha, something very typical of him, Zoro laughed with a big smile. Then that beauty attracts our captain. Good choice, Gummy, Sanji said with a knowing smile. That's right, and I imagine that she will be one of the two that Luffy will want when he wins the game. Nami said looking at the screen. Back in the game, Isabella watched as Luffy got into the hand-to-hand combat pose and smiled challengingly. This will be exciting. And just like that, both of them launched into a fierce fist battle with overflowing emotion. Meanwhile, on the roof of the school building were the two kings in their own fight. Come on Rias, you should know that you can never beat an experienced man, Razor said to Rias arrogantly. Rias was breathing heavily and looked at Razor with eyes full of power. I will not lose. I made a promise and I will win this game to be free with the person I love, she said with pure determination. Razor looked at her with a frown and said, you will never be free. You will live tied to me and will only serve for the future of the underworld. And whichever man you love, he will burn in the flames of my family for all eternity. Rias gritted her teeth and let out a powerful scream. But never, the wave of aura was released from it that impacted almost everyone on the playing field. Instantly, all of Razor's pieces except the Queen, Ravel, and Isabella fell unconscious to the ground. Luffy looked up at the ceiling and smiled. I knew it, Rias. You have the will of a king, he said. But the Mugiwaras. Yes, she has the king's haki, it's incredible, Nami shouted happily. Congratulations friend. I knew you would make it, Hancock said with some tears. Everyone looked at the screen with surprise and happiness while wondering how this will continue. Back in the game, Razor saw his servants fainted in shock and shouted, what have you done? How is it possible that my pieces have fallen like that? Rias was also looking at everything in surprise and looked at herself. Was that the king's haki that Luffy told us about? She asked herself in shock. Haki of the king? What the hell is that? Razor shouted furiously. Rias looked at him with a smile very similar to Luffy's and said, what makes me a true king? Get ready, Razor, now I will fight with everything I have to keep my promise to him. And just like that, she threw herself at Razor with everything he had. On the other hand, Luffy fought against Isabella in a fierce fist battle with enormous joy. Every time his blows collided, you could feel the power of each blow, as well as the joy of both of them for this battle. This is exciting, it's exciting, I have never brought such a wonderful battle in my life, Isabella shouted, receiving a blow in her side and throwing one at Luffy's face. I imagine it, Isabella-chan, if I win this game I can take you with me, and we can enjoy as many fights as we do so often, Luffy shouted, dodging the blow and throwing another one at Isabella's abdomen. It doesn't sound bad, maybe you can finally enjoy a life full of excitement, however, I do not plan to lose in this fight, since it is too exciting to lose, she shouted, grabbing Luffy's fist and punching him in the stomach. But Luffy saw her with a big smile and said, sorry, but I have to keep a promise, and to do that I have to beat you. Giacicando. Steam came out of him causing Isabella to be shocked, and Luffy stretched out his haki-covered arm to launch the attack at him. Gomu Gomu no Red Hawk, he shouted. The fist covered in flames shot towards Isabella, who received it squarely in the stomach, and she disappeared into light with a smile. Isabella Ravel shouted in surprise. But the Mugiwaras. Everyone was celebrating Luffy's victory of this battle, and Nami said, I knew Luffy would beat him, but I'm a little curious about that promise that Rias and Luffy made. Back in the game, from Razor's team, Orochi retires. Graphia's voice was heard. Luffy looked up at the ceiling to see how Rias was dodging all of Razor's attacks, thanks to observation hockey. I walked towards the building and upon entering, I take a deep breath to say, promotion. Queen. After moving to the queen's room, he ran to the roof and when he opened the door, he found the two kings unharmed. But the Mugiwaras, it's already arrived. Let's see what happens, said Nami, looking at the screen carefully. I hope Luffy teaches that fried chicken a good lesson, Sanji said seriously. The time has come for the final battle, Zoro said seriously. Don't worry, Luffy will win this battle, Hancock said with a smile. Back in the game, I'm here, let me fight him, Luffy shouted, approaching them. Rias looked at him with a smile and making a decision, kissed him on the lips without caring that everyone was watching. This provoked the fury of Razor, who was on fire from what he saw. But the Mugiwaras. Everyone watched the scene with their mouths open, and Nami burst out laughing. Ha, well done, friend, with this he has given that oaf a good blow, and has managed to give Luffy enough courage to defeat him. Back in the game, Rias stopped kissing Luffy and said, it's my first kiss, I hope it serves as motivation for you to defeat him. Luffy gave him his usual smile and said, don't worry, I'll finish this right away. And with that, he went towards Razor, who looked at him with pure hatred and shouted, how dare you kiss my fiancé in front of me? Luffy stopped a few meters from him and with a frown, said, does she want to be your fiancé? I do not think so. But let's leave the talk and start our fight. But this said, she lunged at Razor, who was laughing as he said, idiot, I am an immortal phoenix, my regenerative flames prevent me from falling. But his speech turned into an antics when Luffy punched him in the stomach with his fist. How is it possible? Razor asked with pain on the ground. Luffy looked at his fist covered in hockey and with a smile, said, it seems that hockey also works with his regenerative factor. Now, let's raise the level. Balance breaker. Instantly, a red light covered him, and before everyone was a Luffy in a scarlet dragon armor with wings. Boosted gear scale male, Luffy shouted. But the Mugiwaras. An armor, how great, Usopp, Chopper and Frankie shouted with stars in their eyes. Wonderful, that's beautiful armor, Hancock said with admiration. She looks powerful, Zoro said. It looks like a humanoid dragon, said Sanji. Fufu, Captain Sen has gained great power, said Robin. It's a beautiful red color, it goes so well with Luffy. Nami said with a smile. Back in the game, what the hell are you? Razor shouted, standing up in fear. Luffy looked at him and said, I am the one who will become the king of the pirates, I'll end this now. Instantly, his fist was covered with hockey and a golden aura could be seen on the fist itself. Immediately a sound was heard throughout the place. Boost, 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 boost. The golden aura increased in intensity, turning into a black and red aura that roared with great power throughout the place. Everyone felt enormous pressure and Razor only saw Luffy with pure fear. Wait, that's not normal, is going to kill me, why do you meddle in the affairs of demons? Don't you understand that it's for the future of the underworld? He shouted in pure horror. Luffy gritted his teeth and shouted, I'm not interested in that, I am someone who can't stand people like you who want to rule over the lives of others, that suffocates me, the only reason I will defeat you is so that Rias can be free, no one can take away his freedom, and I will kick your ass to keep him free, this is for your freedom, you bucking chicken. With that, he lunged at him with fury and landed a powerful blow on his jaw with all the power he had. A huge explosion formed throughout the field, with black and red lightning bolts shooting everywhere. Rias saw this with wide eyes and said, it's incredible he's not touching it. The blow lasted for a while until Razor was thrown into the sky and finally fell to the ground unable to move. Everyone watched this in amazement when he disappeared into light and Graphia's voice announced, Razor-sama, he has been defeated. The victory goes to Rias Gremory-sama. Rias looked in shock at Luffy, who made the armor disappear, although the arm with which he hit Razor still remained, and said, did you achieve it? Did he really achieve it? Luffy looked at her with his usual smile and said, we did it, Rias. Now you are free. Rias began to cry and threw herself into Luffy's arms to celebrate with pure joy. Below them, Ravel saw Luffy with his eyes open and his mouth open. Is he what I've always looked for? He asked himself. But the Mugiwaras, they celebrated hugely for Luffy's victory. He did it, he defeated him, Usopp shouted with joy. This deserves a glass of sake, Zoro shouted, drinking. Yes, Luffy kicked that chicken's butt in your face, you damn perverted oaf, Sanji shouted with pure joy. Hancock, Luffy managed to free our friend, I'm so happy, Nami shouted, hugging Hancock. Yes, partner, Luffy has shown that there is no one who can beat him, Hancock said happily. The party was still going on in the club room for Luffy's victory, and it looked like it would continue all night. Chapter 9. Celebration. Kaido residence. There was a big party in the huge mansion, with the Mugiwaras and the Gremory group celebrating the victory in the game. Everyone ate, danced and enjoyed the joy of victory. Are your parties always so fantastic? Rias asked, drinking next to Nami. Of course, there has never been a lack of a good banquet after a victory in our world, let's celebrate, Nami shouted with a glass of alcohol. However, Luffy was standing away from them while he looked at his arm that had not returned to normal and had a conversation with Drake. You were too reckless using that power called Haki on your arm, and increasing his power has caused him to become dragonified, Drake yelled angrily. I'm sorry. I admit that I didn't consider the consequences of Haki when using it that way. And now what do I do with my arm? Luffy asked, looking at the gem. Maybe those demons have some solution that can return your arm to normal. The problem is the enormous amount of dragon power in your arm, so a good solution would be to extract it. Drake said seriously. Thank you for that, Drake. Well, I'll go back to the others to ask Riaz about a solution and enjoy the party, said Luffy. See you around, buddy. Drake said, retiring to sleep. Luffy returned to the party and approaching Riaz said, Riaz, I talked to Drake and he told me that my arm was dragonified and that to return it to normal the dragon power must be extracted from it. Do you know any method to achieve this? Riaz thought about it for a moment but then gave a mischievous smile as he said, there is a way to do it and Akainu and I can do it. Oh really? Which one? Luffy asked hopefully. Riaz took Luffy's hand and began to lick the black-haired man's fingers while he said, suck all that power like this. Most of them watched this with their eyes open. Akainu licked her lips waiting for his opportunity to enjoy it. Sanji had a nosebleed. Some men looked at Luffy with clear envy. Robin laughed in amusement and Nami asked, can we also participate? Unfortunately not. They need to be demons with great skill in magic. I guess when they manage to become demons they can do it, said Riaz with a smile. Nami just huffed a little angrily and said, lucky, I wanted to help Luffy. Then, a magic circle appeared before them and Ravel Phoenix appeared accompanied by Ubaluna and Isabella. Greetings, I have come to bring your bet prize. Ubaluna-san and Isabella are the ones I have chosen to be with Luffy-sama. Ravel said looking at Luffy with a big blush. Sama? The Mugiwaras asked themselves in surprise. Luffy looked at them seriously and said, I guess I can't do anything to refuse this, so I can only welcome you. Although I'm glad to have you with me, Isabella-chan. Isabella smiled wildly at him and Luffy looked at Ubaluna. I want you to know that I won't treat you like a trophy, so I hope you can get along with all of us, he told her with a smile. Ubaluna couldn't help but blush, but she tried to hide it. Nami approached Ravel and said, thank you for bringing our prize, I assure you that Luffy will take good care of them. And what will you do? I'll go back to my house. Right now I am a free bishop from my mother and she has given me freedom to do whatever she wants. Anyway, maybe we'll meet again and I hope to talk to you, Pirate Queen. Ravel said with a smile. Nami smiled back and said, I look forward to it. Then, Ravel looked at Luffy and seeing him with that beautiful smile he couldn't help but feel a warmth inside him that not even his flames could give him. I hope to see you again, Luffy-sama, she said with some stuttering. Luffy only increased his smile and said, so do I, Ravel. I hope to see you again. Ravel created her magic circle and disappeared as everyone noticed how she was redder than Ria's hair. Seriously, Luffy? How do you go about winning over girls like this? Sanji asked with clear jealousy of Luffy's luck. What are you talking about, Sanji? Luffy asked confused. Forget it, Sanji responded, patting his shoulder. Everyone was laughing at this when a voice said, well done, Luffy. You have demonstrated the great power of the D. Everyone turned to see D in a chair, looking at them with a big smile. D, what are you doing here? Luffy asked curiously. He smiled even more and approaching them, said, well, I saw your game against the Little Bird team and I came to give them a prize for the victory. A prize? Usopp asked, intrigued. He nodded and created a magic circle on the ground as he said, first, I will bring you another person to be with you on this adventure. The circle shone and a certain man appeared from it, making Luffy tremble. Luffy, what's wrong with you? Why are you shaking? Riaz asked him worried. Luffy? The man asked, looking at Luffy. Luffy looked at him with a fearful smile and said, hello Grandpa. Grandpa? Everyone in the Gremory group asked themselves, surprised. Out of nowhere, the gigantic man lunged towards Luffy to hit him with a blow that sounded throughout the mansion. Troublesome boy, how dare you die like that and then appear before me again as if nothing had happened. You left me on the brink of death when I found out you died and I couldn't eat a single rice cake all week. What do you have to say to that, ungrateful grandson? Garp shouted in fury. I'm sorry, Grandpa, Luffy shouted, trying to apologize. Everyone looked at this with a drop of sweat and Akainu looked at Riaz worried. Riaz, why are you shaking? He asked her. Akainu, that man is a lot like my mother when it comes to being scary and if he is really Luffy's grandfather, I can understand it very well, Riaz answered tremblingly. Akainu just laughed amused at what her friend was saying and they watched as something interesting happened. Excuse me, but I must ask you to put my son down right now, Mickey said kindly. Garp looked at her confused and said, what are you talking about? This is my grandson and I don't remember my son being with you. Grandpa, she is my mother in this world. She is the one who has taken care of me since I arrived and that is why I see her as my mother, Luffy told him after calming down. Garp looked at him for a moment, then looked at Mickey and back at her grandson to say, I deserve a good explanation. Ah, I can explain, D said with a smile. Garp looked at him confused and asked, who are you? Allow me to introduce myself. I am D, the deity of people like you who have the letter D in their name. I am the one who made it possible for your grandson to continue alive, and now I will explain to you everything that happens. D said with a big smile. And just like that, he proceeded to tell her from when he brought Luffy to this world until he brought him to him. When he finished, Garp was wide-eyed and looked at his grandson, who was smiling at him. When he finally managed to process everything he had heard, he began to laugh out loud while he patted Luffy on the back and said, "Ahahaha, so my grandson is someone so special that I should bring him into this world to solve the problems here. Well, certainly he can do it if he goes out to his grandfather, hahaha." Then, Nami approached Garp and said, "Excuse me Grandpa Garp, but I would like to tell you that Luffy is in a relationship with me and other girls." Garp looked at her surprised but gave her a big smile and said, "It was time, I thought he would die before seeing him have a girlfriend. And he has many, you're quite a Casanova, Luffy." Luffy just looked at him with a drop of sweat and Riaz approached him to talk to him. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Garp-san. My name is Riaz Gremory and I am happy to meet the grandfather of the man who saved me from that commitment." Garp looked at her with a smile and said, "Oh, so much formality is not necessary. I'm glad my grandson taught that little bird a lesson and freed you. Also, I know that you are very special to my grandson and he will protect you with his life, after all he is a monkey." Riaz smiled as he looked at Luffy with warm eyes when D coughed to get attention. "I'm sorry to interrupt this beautiful moment, but there is one more thing I want to say. Since the Mugiwaras are part of my world, I have decided to give each one an artifact similar to the sacred gear of this world. And if you're wondering how I'm able to do it, I can do it, period. Therefore, I have decided to call these artifacts Dawn Gears and I will give the first one to the future Pirate Queen, Nami," he said approaching her. He touched her forehead and a glow emerged towards her. "Ready? You now possess the Dawn Tempest, my version of this world's Zenith Tempest. I'll explain. The Zenith Tempest is the second strongest longinus in history and its power is based on weather. I know you will be able to use my version in the best way," D said with a smile. Nami looked at herself in surprise and then gave D a hug as she said, "Thank you, D-san, this power will help me be useful to Luffy in a battle." "Nami, you are useful to me at all times no matter how powerful you are," Luffy said with a smile. "I know, but I can't help but feel that I must be stronger to support you in a battle. I have my Climattact and Zeus, but I still feel that it is not enough and if I am to be your queen, I must be much stronger," Nami said determinedly. Luffy looked at her with that determination and could only smile at her decision. He put his hands on her shoulders and lovingly said, "I don't regret having you by my side since you are a great woman who is capable of being with me in all situations. I love you, Nami." Nami smiled at him with tears and then hugged him with love in full view of everyone who was looking at them with a smile. Upon separating, Luffy looked at D to ask, "D, what other powers will you give to my Nakamas?" "Ah, they will know that when I give it to them. For now, be sure to train your future pirate queen with her new power and perhaps hockey. For now, I'm going to my domain to continue observing them. But I'll be back soon to bring someone else and give another power. See you," said D, disappearing. When he left, Garp looked at his grandson and asked, "Well Luffy, have you taught this team you're in hockey?" "More or less. Some already know the observation 1 and others the armor 1, although Riaz knows the observation 1 and has the king's 1. Luffy answered. "I see. In that case, I will teach you the rest of hockey in my own way," Garp said with a macabre smile. The Gremory team trembled at that smile and Luffy told them, "I'm really sorry, but I can't stop Grandpa when it comes to training. After all, this old man has thrown me into horrible things because of his training and has almost killed me many times." Race and his team looked at him in disbelief and Garp said, Hey, don't talk about me like that. When I threw you into that bottomless precipice." Ria's team looked at him with wide eyes. "Or when I leave you alone in that jungle at midnight," Garp continued. The team's eyes grew bigger at this point. "And when I tie you to some balloons to let you fly in the sky," Garp continued without worrying. At this point, the jaws of everyone on the team dropped to the floor. "It was to turn you into a man capable of anything," Garp finished with a smile. "Yes, I definitely do not wish for this man and my mother to meet. It will be chaos for the underworld," Riaz thought in pure terror. "Anyway, you may be demons, but you've never been to the real hell I'm going to take you to," Garp said with a chilling smile. Now if everyone on the Gremory team was trembling with terror, even Akainu and Luffy could only wish them the best in that hell. Specials 1. Cell phones. After his first day at the academy, Luffy had arrived at the mansion with a bag and upon finding them in the living room, he told them seriously, "Guys, I bought you a tool that you will need in this world and it will help us communicate." "What are you talking about, Luffy?" Nami asked interested. Luffy took some boxes out of the bag and distributed them to everyone. Everyone saw the device that they took out of them with great amazement. This is what Riaz had when we saw her for the first time. Yusuf said, looking at the device with stars. They are called cell phones and are used to communicate with everyone. They are similar to Den Den Mushi, only that they allow you to have a more private communication with someone. They have been evolving over time and are now more futuristic, having the ability to connect with the world with something called the internet. I have bought each of them a modern cell phone with the money I have earned through my life and hard work so that we can stay in touch if we need each other. And they are the only ones I will buy from them for now, so, Frankie, don't you dare dismantle yours to investigate it, Luffy said with pure seriousness. Frankie stopped inspecting hers upon hearing his warning and smiled innocently. Then, Nami approached him and asked, "It's very kind of you to have bought this from us, but we have no idea how to use it, unlike the Den Den Mushes. How do they work? That is why I will teach you everything about its use. But I warn you. These items are not free at all, so I have to pay for them monthly, and I am making a great sacrifice for you. Therefore, only use them for calls. If they use the internet, they will use it moderately, so that there are no problems. Do you understand?" Luffy said, looking at them with a look that was scary. They all nodded, and Luffy proceeded to show them how it was used by making some test calls with his when calling them. That way, everyone had each other's number and went on with their lives. 1 month after, everyone was in the living room watching television when they heard Luffy's furious shout that said, "Nami, what the hell is this high bill for using your cell phone?" Everyone looked at the place where the orange-haired woman should be to find that there was no one, and when they looked outside, they found her fleeing like a soul leading the devil. Reason. Nami did respect the rule of moderate internet use, but she spent the entire month talking to her friends from the club on her cell phone, and Nami's bill for calls became very high. Luffy punished her with no purchases until she managed to pay that infernal bill, and in this way, Nami learned to be more moderate with her cell phone. Supermarket. Luffy was before his mother, who was writing on a piece of paper very seriously. "It seems that now we will be able to buy more than before thanks to your work with that girl. Well, I have already made the list of what is needed in the house, now I leave it to you so you can go to the supermarket and buy everything that is there," she said with a smile. "Of course, Mom. I won't be long," said Luffy, taking the list so he could leave. "Wait a moment, son," she stopped him. Luffy turned around, confused, and asked, "Is there a problem?" Mickey smiled sweetly at him and said, "Only you won't go alone this time, treasure." Moments later, at the supermarket, Luffy was somewhat annoyed since next to him were his 5 human nakamas. Nami, Zoro, Sanji, Usopp and Robin accompanying him to do the shopping. "Seriously, I could do the shopping alone. Why did my mother insist so much that they accompany me?" The annoyed one snorted. "Come on, Luffy. Your mother thought we could help you with the purchase since, as she told us, you have only done it since your father died. Let us help you with your responsibilities," Nami told him affectionately. "It's true, Luffy. Also, if I am by your side I can recommend essential foods that will benefit the nutrition of your home," Sanji said with a smile. "You see, Sanji. What happens is that," Luffy tried to say. "Hey, this place is a little busier than in our world. He asked me if they have anything interesting," said Usopp, looking at everything with stars. "Usopp, we must go for," Luffy tried to stop him. "Hey, I'm bored in this place. Is there a bar or place where I can drink sake?" Zoro asked, clearly bored. "No, Zoro, you must stay by our side," because Luffy yelled angrily. "Oh, I see some interesting articles there. Luffy, can you give me money to buy?" Nami asked excitedly. "Nami, I need you to help me buy what I need because where did everyone go?" Luffy shouted when he realized that it was only them. "Ah, I think they went to look for what they were interested in," said Nami, looking around. Luffy sighed angrily as he saw how his nakama were so idiotic as to wander into an otherworldly store without knowing almost anything about him. It just can't be. "Nami, we must find them before they do something stupid, since I only have what my mother gave me for food and household things. We can't buy anything else because we don't have enough money for interesting things right now. With the cell phones I was left with almost nothing and what I earn at work after that is what will be used for this purchase," said the annoyed one. "Oh, I'm sorry, Luffy," Nami said sadly. Luffy looked at her with warm eyes and stroking her hair said, "Alright. I understand that this world is marveling you too much and that is why you want to explore everything. I don't blame you, you're just like me when we were in our world. Now, let's go find the others." Nami nodded and that way they went to look for the others. Later, they both walked through the store until they found Sanji talking to the fruit manager. "Do you seriously mean to tell me that these apples are grown in good soil? Come on, they look like they're from any low-class farm. I can't bring such bad fruit home." Luffy saw this with a sigh. He already knew that Sanji would be criticizing the food when he saw it, and that was why he had to have it close by. She approached him and said to the manager, "Don't worry, it's just my brother who is very cautious with food. He wants to be the best chef in the world and he became very manic about quality. Let's go, Sanji." But Luffy, I haven't taken the fruits yet too. But he was pulled by the two, and when he was far from the fruit area, Luffy told him, and I know what you are doing. Luffy, I was just trying to choose good fruit for the house. What's wrong with it? Sanji asked confused. What's happening, Sanji-kun, is that Luffy's family doesn't have much money right now and what his mother gave him was enough for a decent purchase. If you start choosing good quality foods, the money will not be enough for what is needed, Nami told him angrily. Sanji was embarrassed by that and lowered his head as he said, sorry, I did not know. No problem. Now we must look for the others so they don't do something crazy, Luffy said worriedly. Almarima, maybe it's easy. Is there any alcohol in this store? Sanji asked simply. That they give it to drink like a bar, no. But there's a drinks area nearby, said Luffy, starting to walk. Later, they managed to find Zoro arguing with the store managers when he had drunk a bottle without paying. Luffy went towards them and taking the bottle, said, we're sorry, he's my brother and he drinks a lot. Don't worry, I'll pay for the bottle. When they were away, Luffy scolded him for taking something without paying and then explaining, they went to find the other two. Another while later, they managed to find Usopp with Robin since she was making sure she didn't do something stupid. When they were all together, Luffy said, very well, we will stay together since it is not a good idea to separate ourselves in such a large store. We'll just look for what's on the list and then we'll go home. Understood. Everyone nodded and in that way, they bought everything on the list, although Sanji was able to choose the best quality. Upon returning, Luffy was putting away the shopping with the help of his nakamas, and Mickey asked him with a smile, how did it go when you bought with them? Luffy looked at her seriously and said, well, it was tedious at first. But he remembered me when I did the shopping for the first time with you, and I could remember Dad when he yelled at me for my crazy things. Mickey laughed a little amused and said, I'm glad you remembered that. Now you will go with them every month so they can feel like family. Luffy watched her leave and smiled to see her nakamas so happy with her first visit to the supermarket. Electronic games. Note. I placed this story in our times where the Switch, the PlayStation 5 and today's phones exist. Luffy was with his nakamas in the living room while they were in front of the television with something interesting. This thing called PlayStation is great, Usopp said while playing the Kingdom Hearts game on it. The others watched him play on the couch, curious about the game, and Luffy checked the clock at times. If we had had these things in our world we wouldn't be bored. Chopper said, amused. Maybe I can create a television in our world and also create this thing called PlayStation so we can play it in the aquarium, Frankie said with a smile. It would be great. Usopp, don't let that heartless hit you, Sanji said looking at the game. I don't understand how a key can be a sword if it has no edge, Zoro said with annoyance. Then, Luffy looked at the clock and said seriously, very well, game time is over. Everyone looked at him sadly and Usopp said, oh come on, give us a few more minutes. No, if I leave them they will continue asking for more time and then they won't be able to sleep to go to the academy. I've given them about 2 hours of play and that's all they'll have, Luffy said bluntly. Everyone regretted that and went to sleep to get up early. However, Nami saw a game that caught her attention called Grand Theft Auto and took it to his room. When everyone was asleep, she moved the console into her room and put the disc into play. Let's see, this is supposed to be a thief game, but I don't see how anyone can have thief skills in a game. It's surely a silly game that doesn't show the essence of a thief, she said with an ironic laugh. After all, she was the best thief in her world. Can a stupid game really show what she has experienced in her entire life? The next day, everyone was having breakfast in the dining room except one person, and Luffy could notice this. Hey, where is Nami? He asked worriedly. I don't know, but when I went to wake her up she said that she wouldn't go until she got the million she needed, Robin said, also worried. Millions? That sounds like when she had to get those 100 million to buy the villa from that monster, Usopp said worriedly. Another thing I noticed is that the console was not in the living room when I got up, Frankie said seriously. Luffy immediately got up upon hearing that and ran to Nami's room to knock on the door. He was greeted by a sleepy voice that said, I can't now, I need to teach this idiot a lesson for messing with my money. Luffy already imagined what was happening and used the keys to open the door and find Nami sitting on the bed and glued to the game with dark circles in her eyes. Oh, Luffy. Look, he's almost managed to get the most expensive property in the city, she said, looking at him with a smile. Luffy watched the game for a while and then turned it off angrily while Nami screamed in pure pain. Ooh, she almost managed to make me the boss of the city. Luffy looked at her really angry while the others watched from the door and shouted at Nami. How could you stay playing this game all night? What were you thinking about? Nami looked at him with some tears and said, I'm sorry, but I saw that thieves game and I was very interested so I took it to play it a little. But I liked it so much that I couldn't stop playing it and I think my time passed. Luffy looked at her in disbelief that the serious and controlling navigator of her crew had ended up like this, as if she were a simple 8-year-old girl. He sighed and picked up the game as she said. In that case, I will confiscate this game from you until further notice and you will not be able to play it until I say. Ooh, please, don't take my precious one from me, Nami begged with puppy eyes. I'm sorry, but I'm doing it for your own good. Now, you get into bed and go to sleep. Because you have been playing all night you now have a problem with fatigue and that can be bad for your health. I'll make an excuse at the academy so you don't have problems, Luffy told him in an authoritarian tone. Nami could understand that he cared about her and getting into her bed, he said. It's okay, Luffy. Thanks for worrying about me. Luffy smiled and went towards her to give her a kiss on her lips and then said, you know I love you and I want to see you healthy. Rest my sweet queen and when I return, maybe we can play together. Nami smiled at that and proceeded to sleep peacefully as Luffy left the room. He went to the academy with the game in her backpack and when he returned, he found her awake and energetic, giving her a beautiful smile. He gave her a game schedule so that he could play her favorite game and from that moment on, she sleeps with him at her request so as not to fall into her temptation and sleep next to her. Chapter 10. New Day. Luffy woke up in his bed and looked at the current situation. Luffy, said a beautiful orange-haired woman dressed in underwear next to her. Luffy, sighed a beautiful redhead also in underwear next to him while he slept. Here, a beautiful black-haired woman sighed above him while she hugged her head against her enormous breasts. Luffy, another fight into bed, said a white-haired girl under him almost naked. Don't be afraid, Captain San. Let's have fun, said another black-haired woman next to the orange-haired girl in her underwear. Yes, they were. Nami, Riaz, Hancock, Yamato and Robin who were asleep next to Luffy almost naked. Luffy could only smile at this since he slept with Nami and Hancock, but since the game against Razor, Riaz joined them saying that now she can't sleep if it's not with Luffy and Yamato joined, saying that she wouldn't be left behind when just like Robin, who said it would be fun. Oh, you're awake, Luffy, Riaz said, opening her eyes. Luffy looked at her with a smile to say, good morning Riaz. She smiled mischievously at him and placing herself on top of him, putting her breasts in his face, she said, I feel like my pretty servant will attack me in the morning. What do you say we skip classes and have a little fun? She approached her face slowly and gave her a loving kiss on the lips. When they separated, Luffy looked at her with a smile and said, I can't deny that I would love to, but we must go to the academy. Can't we have fun first? I assure you it will be fun, she told him with a mischievous smile. His hand went towards Luffy's crotch and since he was practically imprisoned, he couldn't do anything. However, his salvation came. Hey, he said that we should go to the academy so don't you dare keep moving that hand, said a newly awake Nami who was looking at Riaz angrily. Can't I do anything with my pretty servant? Riaz asked with a defiant look. Nami sat on the bed, showing off her beautiful body in her underwear and told him with clear authority. You can, but we made a deal that neither of us would do anything until he became a high-class demon so you can't continue. Hey, we agreed not to have relations with him until then. Nothing was said about erotic games without crossing the line. I can give him pleasure that way and you can't say anything against it, Riaz said, putting her hand in Luffy's boxers. You're right. However, you can't abuse it since I plan to take it for the first time. Nami said, putting her hand in his as well. And I will allow that because of their history together. But at least we can have fun with him this way. Riaz said, raising and lowering her hand under his boxers. You're right, Nami said, doing the same. Girls, that's a wonderful thing, but we're late to go to the academy, Luffy shouted as he released his stress. They both smiled and Nami licked her hand like a lustful kitten while she said, delicious, how I always imagined it. You're right, but now we have to go to the academy and when we get back we will have the club meeting here since they are cleaning the building, Riaz said after licking her hand. And in that way, they both woke up the others to get dressed while Luffy remained in bed, unable to believe what had happened. Time after, and this is a photo of Luffy when he was in elementary school. Mickey said showing the photo album. So he's naked. Robin said looking at the photo with a smile. Well, why did you have to show the photo album to everyone? Luffy asked, covering his face out of embarrassment. That's right, everyone was in Luffy's room looking at the photo album where Luffy appears small and naked. Oh, but how cute he was as a little boy and all naked. Akeno said amused. It can't be, everyone is seeing my shameful childhood. Kaido, appear and kill me please, Luffy said, wanting one of his enemies to appear and kill him. This was the worst for Luffy and to make matters worse, the man on his crew laughed at his misfortune. His mother had said, son, I always wanted to show the album to your future friends or whoever your girlfriend was, but you never brought girls home. Now I have this opportunity and I will show them your whole life with our family. Luffy looked at her with a look of are you serious? And he saw how two girls looked at said photo with stars in their eyes. Little Luffy, Riaz said with emotion. Luffy boy, Nami said with stars in her eyes. Luffy saw them with that emotion and couldn't help but smile because of their maternal air. Then he saw Kiba looking at another photo album and asked him disdainfully, "Are you going to laugh like everyone else?" "Haha no. I prefer to stay out of this," the blonde said with a smile. But he turned the page and his face instantly turned cold. "Hey Luffy, what is this photo of?" he asked him with total seriousness. Luffy looked at the photo where he and a brown-haired boy were playing and said, "Oh, he's an old friend from my childhood. He lived next door when I came into this world and we instantly became friends. He had to go abroad with his father for work reasons. Because. Do you know anything about the sword in the photo?" Kiba asked again with a cold tone. Luffy noticed this, but he looked at the photo to find a sword behind his childhood friend. "Very little. I only know that her father had it with her, and when I asked him once, he told me that it was from her work. I haven't seen them again since they left," Luffy answered honestly. Kiba looked at the photo for another while before closing it and looking at Luffy with a smile. "Thank you Luffy, this conversation was very productive," he said, getting up. Luffy watched him leave the room with concern. Something told him that something bad was going to happen. The next day, Ku Academy. Luffy was in his classroom with Nami, Asia, a sleeping Zoro, and Usopp. Sanji was with the two perverts in the perverted threesome, talking about girls without clothes and perversion, so they had no problems. They had been talking about some things until the afternoon and went to the school's backyard to practice baseball for next week's tournament. Everyone was excited about this, especially Luffy's group, since it was a great experience for them. In the first practice, Zoro showed great skill as a hitter by hitting and throwing all the balls far. Usopp was better at throwing, Sanji was better at catching as was Nami. "Well, Kaneko and Zoro will be hitters," Rhea said as he read a book. Luffy looked at her with interest since he saw her with books lately and listened to Robin tell him. "Yufufu, she has become very curious." "What do you mean?" Luffy asked him. Ara. Rhea's has been interested in a certain topic since her victory in the game against Razor and she has been reading about that topic." Akainu said next to Robin. "Oh really? About what?" Luffy asked interested. "Yufufu, she asked me for some books about love. She is very interested in it and she doesn't stop reading to prepare," Robin said with an amused smile. Luffy was surprised and looked at Rhea's, wondering if she has come to love him enough to investigate something so contradictory to demons. "Yufufu reminds me of Navigator-san. She was also very curious about that topic and she didn't stop reading those books. Especially after Wano, when she heard Kaido say that you had died," Robin said with more amusement. Luffy looked at Robin in total surprise since he never knew about that when Rhea shouted, "Okay, Asia. Here I go." She hit the ball and Asia tried to catch it, but the ball rolled out from under her. Luffy saw her with a smile. He really wasn't good at sports, but he liked the girl's enthusiasm. "We must work on that, Asia." "Well Udo, it's your turn," said Rhea, hitting the ball. The ball flew towards Udo, who was standing still without doing anything, and it hit him in the face. "What's wrong with you, Kiba?" Luffy shouted worriedly. The blonde just took the ball and threw it without giving any importance to what happened. But Luffy was still worried about him since she was his nakama and he wondered what was wrong with her. The next day, Luffy was with his and Asia's nakamas eating her lunch when the two perverts appeared and said, "Hey Luffy. There are some rumors that are circulating out there." This caught everyone's attention and Luffy asked, "Really? What kind of rumors?" "Well, they say that a certain orange-haired bitch seduced the Ice King and that she is cheating on him with several boys from the academy. They also talk about that beautiful girl with black hair who bewitched you and only used you to be popular," Motohama explained. Luffy looked at Nami and Hancock, who had a furious expression on their faces. He looked around and could notice how some girls were looking at them with anger and there were even some that were giving them murderous looks. He looked at the two perverts and said, "Pure rumors, nothing true. Don't get carried away by simple lies created to hurt people." They both nodded and a certain girl with glasses appeared saying, "Wow, the handsome boy defending those two. It moves and excites me at the same time." Luffy looked at her with a smile and said, "Well, unlike these two perverts, I like you. It's good to see you Kiryu." Kiryu Aika, known as the biggest perverted girl in the academy, smiled flirtatiously at him and said, "Yufufufu, thank you for those words. I want to know how it feels to have a perverted night with you." Luffy smiled mischievously at him and said, "Who knows, if they allow you, maybe they can give you what you want. See you later Kiryu, we have to go to the club room." And just like that they retired to the club room to see Rhea's club room. Upon entering, everyone could see Rhea's with Sona and the student council. "Wow, I see Sona-chan and the student council are with us," Luffy said with a smile. Sona also looked at him with a smile and said, "We only came to talk to Rhea's about the tournament. By the way, the game against Razor was magnificent, congratulations on your victory." "Thank you, I really appreciate your congratulations," said Luffy. Then, Sona looked at Rhea's and said, "We will see each other at the tournament and I hope you give your all." Rhea's gave him a challenging smile and said, "Of course yes and I assure you that we will win." In that way, the council left the club room and Riaz looked at everyone to say, "Okay, guys. We will give everything in that tournament to win." "Yes," everyone shouted. On the day of the tournament, at night, the sound of a slap could be heard throughout the room. "Did that wake you up?" Riaz asked Kiba very angrily. He just turned his head to the side with a cold expression. It had been a very energetic tournament with the CIO and the council putting up a great fight. But Kiba had been absent the entire time. In the end they won, but Riaz was really upset with the blonde. Has the tournament already ended? "If you'll excuse me but I wish to leave," Kiba said, leaving the room. Everyone watched him leave worried and Riaz could only sigh in worry. At night, streets of Ku City. Kiba was walking in the rain while remembering everything that happened in his childhood when a certain person appeared before him. Me, but look who we have here. The pretty boy of the demons," said a certain crazy priest. Kiba looked at him coldly and said, "Fried Zelsen. I'm sorry, but I don't have time for your games. Come on, don't leave me so alone after all. I want to introduce you to my new friend Excalibur," Fried shouted, showing a sacred sword. Kiba looked at the sword with pure hatred and said coldly, "I will never forgive Excalibur." Chapter 11. Sword. Luffy was in the club room waiting for Akainu, as she would be in charge of extracting the dragon power from her arm to provide a temporary remedy for the mistake she made. Then, the door opened and a beautiful Akainu in a white cloth appeared in front of him. "I'm ready, Luffy-kun. Let's get started," she said with a smile. Luffy looked at her with some nervousness since Riaz explained to him what her treatment for her arm would be like and, knowing that Akainu was very similar to Robin, he couldn't help but fear for her chastity. She saw how the black-haired woman knelt before him and said, "Let's start. Luffy-kun, give me your arm," she said mischievously. Luffy offered her his hand with some hesitation and Akainu looked at him with amusement and then began to suck on her finger with pure lust on her face. Luffy couldn't help but shudder at the wonderful sensation on her finger. She watched as Akainu began to lick slowly, suck passionately, and look at him with mischievous eyes. After a long while of sucking, Akainu took her finger out of her mouth to look at him with mischievous lust and said, Ara, seeing you like this turns me on. Reminds me of when I was a stalker with boys." Luffy looked at her in shock without believing what she heard and Akainu continued, "This excites me too much. It makes me want to have an adventure with the legendary Ice King and Captain who achieved so much in his other life with the power of him. But I am inexperienced and I don't know how to do it, so maybe my adorable Captain Kun can guide me." Luffy looked at her with enormous surprise and caution. He now knew that this girl was worse than Robin because he had her and Nami's qualities combined. She was mysterious, fun and curious like Robin, but she was also flirtatious, mischievous, adventurous and sensual like Nami. With all those qualities in her, he clearly couldn't lose her wariness or he would end up in bed with her and unable to resist. "Akainu, I must clarify that I promised Nami to give her my chastity, and I am not going to break that promise," he told her, trying to get away from her. But the black-haired girl looked at him with a smile full of mischief and then climbed onto Luffy's lap to look at him with eyes full of desire and say, "Yufufu, that sounds good. That way, I can have a wonderful adventure with you by stealing your precious kitten chastity. I get too excited when I imagine it." She began to slowly bring her face closer to Luffy's to bring her lips together and Luffy tried to resist while she said, "Akainu, I don't think we should have that adventure. You don't know what Nami is like when someone steals what she considers valuable and you could be in danger." Akainu smiled mischievously at him and as he got closer, he said, "Well, that motivates me even more. I want to know what it feels like to have a dangerous adventure with you." "Well, that adventure is totally cancelled for me," said a familiar voice next to them. The two looked at the source to find Nami, Hancock, and Riaz staring at them with murderous aura. "Nami, it's not what it seems," Luffy told her, trying to calm her down. Ara. It seems like they discovered us," Akainu said with an amused smile. Nami saw Akeno's eyes full of anger since she knew that the black-haired woman was a danger to her captain's chastity and asked her, "Can we know what you were trying to do to Luffy?" Akainu made a thoughtful face for a moment and then said with amusement, "Don't know. Maybe, go deeper with your pretty captain." Luffy and Riaz had their mouths open at her words and Nami was releasing rays of fury thanks to her new dawn gear. "I'll tell you just once, bitch, get away from my captain," she yelled at him, releasing something similar to a storm in the living room. Akainu stood up and releasing the lightning bolt from her with an amused smile, said, Ara. Then force me." Luffy saw how the atmosphere became too tense with lightning around the two lightning women and Riaz intervened saying, "It's enough Akainu, come with me, I must talk very seriously to you about what you do." "Of course, Riaz," Akainu said following Riaz, but stopped next to Nami. "I recommend you protect Luffy-kun's valuable chastity or I will steal it from you, kitten." He continued on his way, leaving a furious Nami as she looked at Luffy with clear anger and the captain was trembling at her murderous aura. He saw how the orange-haired girl approached him with slow but furious steps and he desperately tried to calm her down. "Nami, I promise not to let myself be tempted." She jumped on top of me and started seducing me like a sensual cat. I mean, I'm not saying I was attracted to her since she has your sensuality and naughty ways, but I tried to resist. It was just too hard and oh Nami, that hurts, he said as he felt her cheeks being pulled. Nami was pulling her captain's cheek hard without needing hockey since Garp had told her that she could use the love fist and she looked at him with an angry face as she said, "So you couldn't resist because she was very similar to me? Does that mean you were about to fall?" "No, it's not what you think," Luffy told him with pain. Nami looked at him angrily and with a huff, she let him go to leave the room while saying, "Do what you want." Hancock followed her just as angry and they left Luffy, who didn't understand Nami's attitude very well. At night, Luffy walked with his and Asia's nakamas towards the mansion, and upon arriving, Luffy felt that same sensation when he approached the church. He opened the door forcefully and upon reaching the living room, they found Mickey with two girls in religious outfits. "Mom," Luffy said worriedly as he entered the room. Mickey looked at him with a smile and said, "Oh, son. Look who just arrived." Luffy looked at the two girls, seeing one with brown hair and two pigtails and another with what looked like short bluish hair. He felt the sacred power in them, but he did not feel danger from either of them. The brunette smiled sweetly at him and said, "Hello, hi do Luffy-kun. Do you remember me?" Luffy looked at her with a little doubt and said, "I don't remember a girl as pretty as you in my life." The girl couldn't help but blush and after laughing a little, she showed a photo of herself as she said, "Hahaha, thank you very much for that compliment, but I assumed you wouldn't recognize me. After all, I didn't look like one when we were kids." Luffy looked at the photo and pointed at it in pure surprise as he said, "Are you that child he played with years ago?" "Fufu, the same. At that time I dressed as a boy, but I was always a girl. Now I have returned to Japan and I have been able to see you again," said the girl with joy. She returned to her parents for a very important work matter. "Don't you think it's incredible, son?" Mickey said with a smile. "I think so," Luffy said with a complicated expression. "And I see that you have new friends." "Hello, my name is Shido Arena, nice to meet you." "She is my friend Zenobia Corda," said Arena, introducing herself to Luffy's nakama. Zenobia just looked at them neutrally, which made all of Luffy's nakamas worried, except Sanji, who saw both girls with hearts in his eyes. Nami approached them and took charge of the introductions. "It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Nami and I am Luffy's girlfriend. There's Oro, Sanji-kun, Robin, Usopp and Hancock. We have been friends with Luffy for a few years, so we have not known that he had a friend when he was a child." "Oh, I didn't know that Luffy-kun had a girlfriend, much less that she was so cute. Oh Luffy-kun, this must be the work of the Lord and his blessing," Arena said as she made a prayer pose. Luffy and Asia felt a sharp pain in their heads when Arena did that and this was noticed by Zenobia, who saw them with discriminating eyes. Hours later, Grace was already at the mansion because Nami had called her with the cell phone that Luffy bought her and now she was hugging Luffy and a relieved Asia. "I'm so glad to see you safe. When Nami told me that there were some women from the church here, I immediately came here," she said with a sigh. "Thanks for worrying. Do you know why the two of them came?" Luffy asked after the hug. "I don't know yet, but they have asked us to meet in the club room tomorrow," Riaz explained seriously. Everyone looked surprised at this, and Riaz said as he took off his clothes, "Well, it's time to rest to see them tomorrow." "Riaz, what are you doing?" Nami yelled angrily. Riaz looked at her confused and only said, "Getting ready to sleep." "And why are you taking off all your clothes?" the orange-haired girl shouted, trying to cover Luffy's eyes. "Because I can't sleep with clothes on. I need to be naked so I can sleep," Riaz explained, taking off her bra. "Ah, you are a free person like me. In fact, if it weren't for my companions in the same room, I would also sleep naked," Luffy said, understanding Riaz. "Well, thank goodness they are there, although I think there would be nothing wrong with it. He is free to sleep however he wants," Nami said thoughtfully. In the end, Riaz finished taking off her clothes and climbed into bed to sleep. "They won't come?" she asked with a smile. "Are you planning to sleep with us?" Nami asked him upset. "Yeah. I came to live here and I want to sleep with Luffy." "Come on, Nami. You have already given me permission to be one of Luffy's girlfriends and there should be nothing wrong with me sleeping with you," Riaz told him with a smile similar to Luffy's. "Sleep with us no, naked yes. I'm sorry Riaz, but despite having allowed you to be one of Luffy's girlfriends, I won't allow this kind of thing. I'm very protective of Luffy and I don't want to let anyone cross the line with him," Nami told him bluntly. Ray saw her with a pout and said, "You look too much like my mother and Grafia. I hope you don't spend so much time with them, they would make you their daughter and her sister." "Okay, how about I wear a see-through negligee to sleep?" "Okay, I can allow that," Nami said with a smile. "On one condition. That you also wear it and don't wear anything underneath," Ray said with a mischievous smile. Nami became nervous at those words. She slept with Luffy very close to him, but she didn't have the courage to show him his body yet. She knew that he was attracted to her since in Alabasta, the black-haired man had a nosebleed from seeing him, and she felt proud of that. But she didn't feel brave enough to do it again. She had shamelessly shown his body to other people by playing with them or charging them for it, but it was one thing to show it to someone ordinary and quite another to show it completely to the man you love. She still didn't feel ready. "Riaz, I don't think it's necessary. I can sleep very well with Luffy wearing underwear and he doesn't mind," she tried to excuse herself with a smile. But Riaz smiled mischievously since he had sensed something like that. He had heard from Luffy how he was attracted to Nami's body ever since he first saw her in that bathroom in Alabasta, and that Nami was not ashamed to show it off to anyone for a benefit except him. Then, she realized the truth and wanted to help her friend become more confident with Luffy so that he will show himself completely. No, if you don't accept my condition, then I will sleep completely naked next to Luffy. You decide. Either we both sleep with Luffy in a transparent negligee showing him our bodies through the fabric, or I sleep with you completely naked and with Luffy's arm as a pillow on my body. Riaz told him in a mischievous voice. Nami looked at her nervously since she felt cornered. She didn't want to show Luffy his body so soon, but she also didn't want to let Luffy sleep with a totally naked Riaz. It's not that she doesn't trust Luffy, but she knows that even the most innocent and pure person can fall to such temptation. She therefore heaved a sigh and said, "Okay, I'll sleep in that transparent negligee with nothing underneath. But come with me, I bought you an orange one to match your hair," said Riaz, pulling it. "Perfect. At least I could cover my orange bush down there," Nami thought with a bit of hope. They left Luffy with Asia, who stayed waiting for them for a while. After a few minutes, Riaz came out in a red negligee that showed off her wonderful body through the fabric and said, "Come on, Nami. Go out and show your future king what will be his." "I'm coming. Just let me get ready," said Nami's voice in her clothing room. After 2 minutes, Nami finally came out and Luffy was speechless at what he saw. She was wearing an orange fabric negligee, which showed the navigator's beautiful body in a wonderful view. She could see her well-worked waist, her model legs, her exercised stomach, her huge breasts with those beautiful nipples and her most private place completely exposed to her. At times she couldn't see him well because of her nosebleed, and now, she could see him a little through the fabric, but he could see the entrance and with more attention, a small bush above that he guessed was orange in color. "Don't look at me so much, idiot, it makes me uncomfortable," Nami shouted at him with a red face. "Sorry," Luffy said, looking away from her. Riaz laughed a little and then said, "Okay, it's time to go to sleep. A difficult day awaits us tomorrow." And just like that, the four of them would go to sleep with Riaz and Nami sleeping with Luffy's arms between their chests, causing the Mugiwara to barely sleep. Chapter 12. Sword Battle. The next day, everyone was in the club room watching the two church girls. "So, the church is looking for the Excalibur swords, and that is why they have sent them to you," Riaz said with a serious face. "Exact. We must find them to return them to the Vatican. They have been stolen by someone very dangerous, and they sent us for our great technique," said Zenobia in a rude tone. Luffy watched as Kiba looked at Zenobia with eyes full of anger, and Zoro asked, "What are Excalibur?" Everyone looked at him for the question, and Zenobia told him with clear displeasure, "Have you never heard of the sacred swords Excalibur? That's why non-believers irritate me." Zoro smiled demonically at him and said, "You're right, I don't believe in gods. I don't care if the gods exist or not, I am the master of my life, I ignore religious issues, but I will never disparage someone who believes in them." Zenobia growled at his words and said, "I don't know if I should be angry at your lack of faith or happy that you don't attack us. Anyway, the original Excalibur was broken in the war a long time ago." "Broken? How could they break a powerful sword?" Robin asked with interest. Zenobia took her cloth-covered weapon and revealed it, revealing a long sword. "This is one of the Excalibur," she said in a serious tone. Luffy and the demons get chills from seeing the sword, and Arena continued with the explanation. "Excalibur was broken into pieces during the war a long time ago. The fragments were collected and converted into a form thanks to alchemy. It was divided into 7 swords. This is one of them." "I see. It's not a real sword, but a fake one," Zoro said naturally. Zenobia looked at him with annoyance and said, "Even if it is a part, it is Excalibur or at least a part of its power. The Excalibur I have is Excalibur Destruction. It is one of the 7 sacred swords that were created. It is in the possession of the Catholic Church." She covered her sword with the cloth again, and Arena took out what looked like a long rope, which began to move as if she were alive, turning into a katana. "Mine is Excalibur Mimic. It can change shape according to my will, so it is really useful to take it anywhere. Like this one, each Excalibur part has a unique ability. This is in the possession of the Protestant Church," Arena said proudly. "Arena, there is no reason to tell these demons about the capabilities of Excalibur, right?" Zenobia said, looking at her angrily. "Wow, Zenobia. Even if they are demons, we have to form a trusting relationship with them in this situation. Also, even if the capacity of my sword is revealed, I am not going to fall to all the demons here. Irina told him with a smile full of confidence. Luffy looked at her with his eyes rolling as he remembered how as a child he fell for some of the other children's tricks because of that trust. But he felt an aura full of hatred and saw how Kokabiel looked at the Excalibur with hatred. Then, Riaz asked the swordswoman, so regarding the theft of the Excalibur, does it have to do with this country, located in the east of the world? Zenobia looked Luffy in the eyes and said, the Catholic Church was in possession of 2 Excalibur, including mine. The Protestant Church also had 2. In the Orthodox Church there were also 2. The last of them was lost in the previous war between God, demons and fallen angels. An Excalibur was stolen from each church. Those who stole it escaped to Japan and brought them to the city. Luffy whistled at those words and Riaz said, it seems that my territory is full of incidents. Nami became thoughtful and said, but it seems strange to me that the thieves have chosen this country to hide. There must be a more powerful reason. Riaz agreed with her and asked Zenobia, who are the ones who stole the Excalibur? The brunette looks at Riaz with serious eyes and replied, those who stole it were the Grigori. Everyone looked at her surprised by her response, although most of them didn't know she was talking about her. What are the Grigori? Robin asked curiously. It is the organization of the fallen angels, an organization in which those angels operate. Akainu explained with some hatred in his words. We know that the main culprit of the theft is one of Grigori's leaders, Kokabiel, said Zenobia with a serious voice. Kokabiel. One of the leaders of the fallen angels who survived the previous wars from ancient times. I never expected to hear the name of a fallen angel that appears in the Bible, Riaz said with a smile. Luffy and his nakamas were surprised by this revelation. Robin thought about it a little since he had read the Bible in search of information and had found out what he needed about demons, angels and fallen angels. What is the reason why you came here? Riaz asked curiously. We sent priests and exorcists to this city secretly, but they kept dying. Our request no, our goal is that no demons interfere in the battle between us and the fallen angels for the Excalibur. In other words, we have come to tell you not to interfere with this incident, Zenobia replied in a restrained manner. Luffy looked at her with annoyance as he didn't like that they tried to stop him. Riaz looked at her with the same expression and said, this way of speaking. Is it restriction? Are you thinking we could collaborate with the fallen angels? Maybe we could partner with them to do something with the Excalibur. Headquarters thinks that maybe, it wouldn't be impossible, Zenobia said with a challenging smile. Everyone was surprised by those words, and Luffy could see a lot of anger in Riaz. It was normal. Someone comes to his territory, then he tells him not to participate or interfere. They also tell them what they want, saying that they would not forgive them if they formed an alliance with the fallen angels. He understood her and took note of this to know how to protect his territories in the correct way. After all, they both had the same level of pride. I'm sure you know that I am the sister of a demon king. So, it means you have a lot of connections with the higher-ups in the church. Then I'll tell you. We are not going to form an alliance with the fallen angels in the name of House Gremory. I am not going to do something that tarnishes the name of our demon, King Riaz said to Zenobia with force of will. Hearing this, Zenobia laughs a little and as she takes her gun to leave, she tells him, Yufufu, just listening to that is enough. We're leaving here. We're leaving, Irina. So you're not going to drink the tea? Riaz asked them with fake pain. I don't need it, Zenobia said with denial. He was about to retreat, but stopped and fixed his gaze on Asia. Are you the witch called Asia Argento? The blue-haired girl told him with clear discrimination. Luffy saw how Asia trembled at her words and clenched her fist furiously. Nami wanted to support her since she had grown fond of her blonde after seeing that she had the same pure heart as Luffy and looked at Zenobia clenching her teeth in fury. Me, Asia said very nervously. Okay, I won't tell the higher-ups what I saw here so you can rest assured. But for you to become a demon, it seems that the Holy Maiden fell so low. Tell me one thing. Do you still believe in God? Said Zenobia with clear pressure. Asia was shaking with some tears and seeing this, the brunette snorted to handle her sword as she said, I imagined that. I can't smell your belief. I can't leave it aside, you should be cut right now. I will cut you in the name of God and he will forgive you. She approached Asia, but out of nowhere, Luffy stood between the two as she said, do not touch her. If you approach her, I won't forgive you. You called her witch. That's right, that's what it is right now, the brunette told him, looking at him without fear. Luffy glared at her, releasing some of the king's haki in the process, and Riaz stopped him knowing how dangerous her power was. Luffy stop. Yes, Luffy you must control your anger or you may cause a big conflict, Nami shouted, touching her shoulder. However, a voice could be heard saying, this is a good time. I will be your opponent, said Kiba with his sword and a great intention to kill. Who are you? Zenobia asked with a neutral face. Kiba smiled at her question and said, I'm your senpai. However, since there are two of you, I want someone else to fight with me. And who would it be? Irina asked now with curiosity. Kiba smiled and pointing at a certain person, said, "My current sensei. Hirano Zoro." Moments later, outside the building, Zoro and Kiba stood in front of the two swordswomen with Kiba in front of Irina and Zoro in front of Zenobia. It turned out like this because Zenobia demanded to be the green-haired man's opponent and Kiba stayed with Irina, although he didn't care. As long as he was fighting Excalibur, the opponent didn't matter. "Let's get started, woman," Zoro said, taking out his swords. Zenobia removed her white cloak to reveal flashy battle clothing that sent Sanji flying with a nosebleed. "Forward, I can teach you a lesson, man without faith," the brunette told him, taking out the Excalibur from her. Zoro looked at her with a growl and said, "Hey, it's good that you believe in your god, but it's not right to treat those who don't believe that way. I already told you, I don't believe in any god, but I don't look down on those who believe." Zenobia looked at him angrily and said, "Only ignorant people say something like that. But it doesn't matter, I will punish you for your lack of belief." Zoro sighed and placing his third sword in his mouth, he said, "There you. Now, let's cut." And just like that, he charged at the brunette with his 3 swords, and the girl looked at him with interest. 3 swords? I've seen people use 2 at the same time, but never 3. This will be interesting. She prepared her sword and when Zoro reached it, he began to attack her with mastery. With each attack, the brunette realized that the green-haired man had combined mastery and power, so she was having a hard time fighting. She was on the defensive and with each attack from Zoro, she became even more frustrated until she backed away a little and used the power of the Excalibur to attack. She slammed the handle of the sword into Zoro's stomach and an explosion could be heard. "I see that you have great mastery and power, but all that is useless in the face of the power of," she said neutrally. But upon seeing Zoro, she was shocked to see how she smiled at him while blood came out of her mouth. "It's not possible. Excalibur destruction is the epitome of destructive power, even one hit from his handle is capable of destroying a mountain, how come you are unharmed?" she shouted, not being able to believe it. Zoro smiled demonically at him and said, "You don't know what I had to endure just for my loyalty to my captain. This is nothing." Then, he was covered in a green aura and everyone was shocked to see what he did, except those who knew him. He made other arms and 2 heads appear on his body, taking on the appearance of a known demon. Ashura the green-haired man shouted with power. Zenobia saw him with furious eyes and shouted, "You are not a human, you are a very dangerous demon. For the will of God I must eliminate you right now." She launched herself with a war cry and the green-haired man began to move to accept the challenge. The swords clashed with a very loud metallic sound and with each blow that Zenobia gave, he became even more frustrated as she failed to cut him. Zoro managed to block each attack successfully and although he used the destructive power of his Excalibur, it seemed that the green-haired man's swords were covered in a stronger power. In an oversight, Zoro managed to push her back and rush towards her to launch one of her best attacks, Ashura Bake. "Moha no Tawanyur," he shouted as Ashura's image was shown behind him. He charged at Zenobia at high speed and in an instant, he passed in front of her with power. Everyone was attentive to what would happen when Zenobia fell to the ground with a wound in her stomach, although it was not very serious. Luffy had told her before the fight that he would defeat her, but that he would not hurt her too much, and he accepted it from her. Zenobia Arena shouted, running towards her friend. The Gremory group was stunned by Zoro's power, and Ria said to Luffy while he was sweating, "Luffy, what kind of swordsman did you get? That man borders on the limits between the human and the demonic." Luffy smiled at him and said, "He is my vice captain and the second strongest of my crew. There is no other swordsman like him and I wouldn't change him for the world." Kiba was somewhat frustrated at not being able to finish his fight, but Riaz ordered him not to continue, and he had to obey. Irina had finished healing Zenobia, and the brunette managed to get up while she said, "I accept my defeat. We will leave this school to continue our mission. However, I have a message for you, wearer of the boosted gear. The ephemeral dragon has already awakened." Luffy looked at her with serious eyes as Drake had warned him about him and that they would have to fight at some point. "Thank you for the warning, I will be prepared," he told her neutrally. And just like that, the 2 girls left the academy to leave everyone with some worries. Chapter 13. The plan to destroy the swords. The next day, Luffy, his nakamas and Kaneko were at the train station in front of a person that Luffy had called for what Luffy had planned. "And? What is the reason why you called me?" Saji asked him annoyed. The pawn of Sona Citri's team, Saji, looked at Luffy with annoyance since he was called when he was on a very important matter. Luffy looked at everyone seriously and said, "I'm going to ask Irina Shido and Zenobia to give me permission to destroy the sacred swords Excalibur." This caused shock in almost everyone, and Saji shouted, "Ooh, I'm going home." He tried to run away, but Kaneko grabbed him so he wouldn't escape. Luffy's nakamas composed of Nami, Zoro and Sanji were thinking about what Luffy was planning, and Kaneko looked at Luffy with a determined face as he said, "I'm going to help Luffy senpai." Luffy smiled at his words, and Saji looked at him with a blue face as he said, "I do because it's his group's problem, right? I belong to the Citri family, I shouldn't be part of this, not at all. Coward, Zoro said lazily. What did you say, you bastard from the Kendo club? Saji shouted furiously. Even though I don't like it, I agree with the Marimo that you are a coward, Sanji said simply. Fuck you, you damn pervert, Saji shouted at him, already fed up. Come on, Saji. I don't know another demon in the academy that can help me more than you, Luffy told him with his usual innocent smile. First, there's no way I'm going to help you, he's going to kill me, Kaichou is going to kill me, the blonde screamed in pure terror. Everyone looked at him with a drop of sweat, and seeing how they looked at him without understanding what he was talking about, he explained to them. Ria-senpai is known for being very kind to her servants, but Kaichu is strict and rude. She is capable of punishing me in the worst way. Everyone imagined the president of the council in a punishment outfit, of course according to each one's imagination. A prison in Luffy's mind, a queen in Nami's mind, a samurai in Zoro's mind and a perverted punisher. In Sanji's mind. After that, Luffy looked at everyone and said, well, the best thing would be that we look for them to move forward. The majority nodded and just like that, they began searching for the two women in the city with an upset Saji. They were walking for a long time and Nami asked, how are we going to find two women in robes on a secret mission? It's not going to be that easy. 20 minutes later, please bless the lost lambs. Please, charity to us in the name of the Father of Heaven. They found them easily. There were two girls in white robes, praying on the road and begging for alms. Were they really that easy to find? Nami wondered with disappointment. How pitiful to see two swordsmen begging for food, Zoro said with a frown. Oh, poor disgraced souls. I have to go feed those two poor beauties without food, said Sanji ready to go towards them. But Luffy stopped him and looked at them with a smile while they were having an argument. How can this be? Is this the reality of developed countries like Japan? That's why I don't like countries that don't have the smell of our beliefs, said Zenobia, annoyed. Don't say that, Zenobia. We have lost all the money we had. So we have to depend on the charity of heretics or else we won't be able to get food, you know. Ah, we can't even buy a single piece of bread, Irina said with pure lamentation. At this point, everyone was looking at them with many drops of sweat. It was all for buying that fake painting, said Zenobia, pointing to the painting next to them. What are you saying? This painting has a drawing of someone who looks like a saint, that's what the person at the exhibition said, Irina refuted angrily. She was clearly scammed. Everyone thought with rolled eyes. So, do you know who the person in the drawing is? Of course, you don't know. Zenobia told him annoyed. Everyone saw the painting and could see in it what looked like a foreigner wearing poor people's clothes with something on his head. There was also a baby angel in the background floating in the air with a trumpet. I think it's Saint Peter. Irina guessed with confusion. Saint Peter? Everyone asked themselves with doubts. Do not waste your time. Saint Peter wouldn't look like that, Zenobia shouted at him, not being able to believe it. No, he must be similar to this one, I'm sure of it, Irina shouted, proud of herself. Is she stupid? Everyone asked themselves with their mouths on the ground. Ah, why does my partner have to be someone like you? God, is this also a test? Said Zenobia, bowing to pray. Hey, don't bow your head. Do you really get depressed when you are very low? Right. Irina said embarrassed. Be quiet, this is why Protestants are called heretics, you have different beliefs than us Catholics, show more respect to the saints, Zenobia shouted at him, now angry. As? What's happening? Aren't Catholics the ones who are still governed by the old law? Irina also shouted furiously. What did you say, heretic? What did you say, heretic? The two began to argue, banging their heads against each other. That scene seems so familiar to us, Zoro and Sanji said naturally. They are the same as you two in that sense, abnormals, Luffy and Nami yelled angrily. But they heard a roar and saw how the two fell to the ground from hunger. Luffy smiled and approached the two as he said, it seems that he is hungry and I hate when someone is hungry. They both looked at him in surprise when they saw how he smiled happily at them. Moments later, delicious Japanese food is delicious, Zenobia said as she ate with tears. Yes, this is the taste of my country's food, Irina said while she cried and ate with joy. They were both filling their stomachs with the food that Luffy bought them at a family restaurant. When they finished eating, Xenovis looked at Luffy seriously and said, you must be happy, I just sold you my soul by accepting food from a demon. Luffy smiled mischievously at him and said, oh, I'll remember that at some point. Maybe I can charge you someday with what I want. Nami laughed amused to see how Luffy behaved like a real demon, and Irina began to pray while she said, ugh, thanks for the food. Ah God, please bless the demons. At that moment, Luffy, Kaneko and Saji's heads began to hurt from that action, and Irina, seeing this, said with a cute face, oh I'm sorry. I did it without thinking. Zenobia looked at Luffy seriously and said, so, why were they looking for us? Luffy looked at her with powerful eyes, which caused a small blush on the blue-haired girl and said, they came to this country to recover the Excalibur, right? That's right. We already said it before, she said neutrally. Luffy nodded, and after drinking some water, he looked at her again with those deep eyes that conveyed many things to those who saw them to say, "I want to help destroy the Excalibur." They both looked at him in shock, while some like Nami and Saji were a little afraid as they waited for what they would say. After a long time of discussion between the two, Zenobia said with a smile, "Okay. We can leave an Excalibur for you to destroy, of course, if you can destroy it. However, they will have to act like us. Undercover so that there are no problems with the higher-ups." Everyone looked at her with a sigh when they saw that she had accepted her request, and Irina asked her worriedly, "Hey Zenobia. Are you sure? Even if it's Luffy-kun, he's still a demon, you know." "Irina. If I tell you the truth, it would really be difficult to recover the 3 Excalibur and fight Kokabiel with just the 2 of us," Zenobia told him seriously. "Well, it's a point," Irina said with some doubts. "In addition, we will have the help of a legendary dragon along with his followers for our mission. I can see that his power is superior to ours even without having fought him. With his power it will be possible to break at least 1 Excalibur and that demon that he has next to him," said Zenobia while pointing to Zoro. "He also has the power to face the Excalibur." Luffy smiled when he saw that they wanted his power to achieve his mission, and with a smile, he said, "Very good, the negotiations are a success. I will lend you the power of a dragon for your mission." They both smiled at his words, but Nami intervened with his businesslike manner. "However, they must ensure that we will be absolved of any problem with his group. If any of your higher-ups appear to attack Luffy or any of us, you must intervene so that they do not harm us." "Okay," she said very seriously. They both looked at each other for a moment and then said, "Okay, you will be absolved of any problem." "Excellent. So I can call my partner for that, right?" Luffy said, taking his cell phone. He dialed a specific number and spoke to a certain blonde boy who was looking for revenge. Moments later, Kiba was drinking coffee while he was talking to everyone present and said coldly, "He accepted the help only because Luffy was willing to ask for it. If I can destroy that damn sword no matter what happens." Zenobia looked at him with a giggle and said, "Paid for that project? Well, I won't say anything about that since we too have abhorred that pagan project. Okay, this is what we will do to attack the swords." After telling the plan, the 2 girls left the restaurant and the others went to their homes. But before leaving, Kiba asked Luffy, "Luffy-kun, why are you helping me?" Luffy looked at him seriously for a few moments until he gave him a cheerful smile and said, "Shishishi, how could I not help you? If you are my nakama and I do everything for my nakamas." Kiba was impressed by such words and couldn't help but shed some tears as he said, "Because I'm just a simple orphan looking for revenge and not worth enough for someone like you to help him." But he saw how the 3 Mugiwaras were laughing at him and Nami told him, "Ahahaha, you don't know what you're saying. Once you become his nakama, you instantly become his responsibility. Maybe you're worthless so he has to help you, but that won't matter to him. He will only go to the end to help the one who earned his friendship and thanks to that he earns the absolute loyalty of his nakamas." Kiba looked at Luffy with surprise and couldn't help but see him next to the figure of his master Rias, since they were similar in that aspect of doing whatever it takes for those who are important to them. A few days later, at night, the group of Luffy, Zoro, Nami, Sanji, Kiba and Kaneko met with the 2 girls from the church in the chapel and they were given priest suits so that they could go unnoticed. After that, they continued with the search of those days to find the swords. Kiba had told them about his meeting with Fried Zelzen, and after Luffy explained him to his nakamas, they proceeded to search for him throughout the city. No progress today," Saji said, somewhat annoyed. It had been a bad few days for them, finding nothing, and they were about to give up. However, Luffy, Kaneko and Kiba felt a familiar sensation, and Luffy shouted, "Above." When they looked, they could see the white-haired wretch looking at them with a smile full of evil. The cursed man rushed towards them with a long sword while he shouted, "Protection for the group of priests." Ho 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 ho. But at that moment, Kiba formed a demonic sword with his power and blocked Zelzen's sword while he looked at him with pure hatred. "Breed," Luffy said coldly. "Is that Luffy-kun's voice?" Well, isn't it a strange meeting? How are you? Have you increased your dragon power? Is it okay if I kill you now?" Fried said, demonstrating his madness. "Is that the crazy guy they dealt with before we arrived?" "He is a horrible man," Nami said with disgust. "Oh, I hear the voice of a beautiful lady. Have you brought a maid so I can purify her, Luffy-kun?" "Don't worry, I will give you top-notch service," Fried said with an evil smile. Luffy gritted his teeth as he remembered what that crazy man tried to do to Asia when he met him and tried to attack the bastard. But a green blur lunged first and clashed its swords against Fried as he smiled demonically. "Why don't you leave the others and face a real swordsman?" Zoro asked maliciously. Fried looked at him and couldn't help but shudder. "Oh, a swordsman with pure demon aura. It's so exciting that I just had an orgasm," he said with a pleasant smile. Everyone looked at them with disgust at those words, but they decided to continue the battle. Zoro got into a fight of power versus speed due to Fried's Excalibur, and when Zoro lost sight of him, Kiba got in to unleash his fury. Then, Fried felt how he was caught in something gelatinous and saw a black rope on his arm. "What the hell is this?" "That's my sacred gear. Now you won't be able to escape," Saji said with a smile. Fried watched as a line connected to a lizard on his arm. He tried to cut it with his sword, but the line was so strong that not even the holy sword could cut it. "You can't cut it." "Yes, we captured him," Nami shouted excitedly. Kiba then charged at Fried with 2 demonic swords, and the priest saw this with a smile. "Oh, so it's not just the holy eraser? Maybe you have the sword birth. But what a lucky demon to have such a rare sacred gear," he said maliciously. Kiba continued on his way to hit him with one of his swords, which turned black, and Fried's smile increased. But demonic swords are nothing for. However, upon colliding, Fried saw how a crack formed on his sword and moved as far away from Kiba as he could while he shouted, "It just can't be," he could have heard Excalibur-chan. Kiba looked at his sword covered in armor hockey and smiled for the first time since that meeting. "Yes, with this power I can defeat Excalibur." Fried clicked his tongue and began to frantically try to cut the tongue that was holding him prisoner when a voice could be heard throughout the place. Sword birth. It is a sacred gear that can have an infinite number of swords depending on the wearer." "Oh, is that you, old Balba?" Fried said with emotion. An old man appeared before everyone with a creepy smile and looking at Fried, said, "Fried, what are you doing?" "Old, I can't run away because of that guy's lizard tongue," Fried shouted angrily. That's because you don't know how to use your sword well. Use the sacred element that is given to you and you will be able to achieve it," Balba said seriously. "Oh, yes, Fried said, starting to concentrate. The sword began to gather aura and began to glow with light. "Take this," Fried shouted, slashing at the tongue. The cut managed to separate Fried's tongue and when he was free, he said maliciously, "Now I'm going to escape. The next time we meet, it will be the time of their deaths." "Damn it, I won't let you escape this time," Luffy shouted, running towards him. But Fried threw a ball of light and instantly everyone disappeared from the place. Just then, Zenobia and Irina appeared before them and Zenobia asked, "What happened?" "We found him, but he and Balba ran away," Luffy said with annoyance. "Good. Let's go after them," Zenobia said looking at her partner. "Okay," the brunette said seriously. They both left to chase the 2 priests and Luffy looked at everyone to notice something. "Where is Kiba?" he asked seriously. "He said he wouldn't let Balba get away and he left after them," Sanji said seriously. "Damn, let's go after him," Luffy said seriously. "Luffy, what is the meaning of this?" said a voice behind them. Everyone turned to find a furious Riaz and Sona with a murderous aura. Yes, they were in trouble. In a nearby park, Riaz stood before everyone with a serious look after Luffy explained everything that happened to her. "So you wanted to help Kiba because he was a nakama to you?" Riaz asked Luffy after hearing the whole story. "That's right, I couldn't leave him alone with his problems and it worried me a lot." "I'm really sorry, Riaz," said Luffy with his head down. Riaz sighed deeply at this, but smiled when she saw that her cute servant saw his teammates as his nakamas. "So Udo went after Balba?" she asked with concern. "That's how it is. It seems like he hates it enough to abandon us here," Nami said seriously. Riaz nodded and looked at Kaneko with a serious expression. "Kaneko, why did you do this?" I asked her. "I don't want Udo to leave and he is our nakama as Luffy senpai says," she answered seriously. Riaz smiled. Luffy had managed to impart his nakama ideology to his servants and now they treated each other that way. There was no doubt that Luffy was a king par excellence. "Well, I won't say that it was bad to have tried to help his nakama, but it was bad to have not told me first and to have gone at his expense," she said bluntly. "We're sorry, but you," the 2 said. But they heard Saji scream next to him and saw how he was beaten by his mistress with magic of 1,000 lashes. Sanji watched this with sweat and everyone looked at Luffy to see if he would receive the same treatment. But Riaz surprised them when he hugged them sweetly while he said, "You 2 really are stupid children. Making me worry so much." This moved the 3 Mugiwaras as Saji watched this with his mouth open and said, "Aichu, they were forgiven. That's how they are." "That's us," Sona said without giving it importance. The punishment continued and Riaz moved away from both of them to say, "Well, Luffy. Show me your butt." Zoro and Sanji were shocked by this and Luffy just shrugged to show her butt to her. But when Riaz was going to strike the first blow, someone stopped her. "Stop, Riaz, you won't achieve anything with that," Nami told him calmly. Riaz looked at her confused and asked, "Why not?" "Because Luffy has a rubber body and I know that your blows won't do anything to him. In fact, the reason why he is so calm is because he knows that he will not feel anything from your blows because they are made of rubber since they will bounce." Nami responded with a sigh. Riaz was surprised by Luffy's body and asked, "So what can you do?" Nami smiled evilly and preparing her fist said, "I will give him the punishment for you. There will be 1,000 fists of love in the butt." Luffy trembled at what he heard and closed his eyes waiting for his ordeal. That day, Luffy's butt died. Chapter 14. Meeting with Kokabiel. At night, Luffy was sleeping with Nami, Riaz, Akainu, Robin and Hancock, but he felt an enormous pressure that alerted him. Riaz and Akainu also woke up feeling the same, and Luffy said, "That shitty priest." This woke up the others, and when they looked out the window, they could see Fried outside the mansion with a disgusting smile. Riaz looked with cold eyes as there was another person next to him and said, "It's Kokabiel. Do you mean who Zenovia told us about?" Nami asked worriedly. Riaz nodded, and with that, everyone got dressed to go outside and face the two ruffians. The rest of the Mugiwaras also woke up and were escorted outside to see Fried watching them with a manic smile. "Yahoo Luffy-kun, Asia Tan. They seem in a bad mood. What happened? Shall I interrupt you? Wow. Don't tell me to catch you all having hex. So, I'm sorry. Reading the environment is not my strong point," he said with a crazy laugh. Luffy and the rest of his nakamas looked at him with disgust. "What do you want, damn?" Luffy shouted furiously. But Fried pointed up and everyone could see how Kokabiel smiled evilly at them. "This is our first meeting, Riaz Gremory. I have heard stories about you, and the truth is, that crimson hair is one of the things I hate the most since it reminds me of your brother," Kokabiel said with an evil smile. Riaz looked at him with cold eyes and said, "Nice to meet you. It's a pleasure to meet one of Grigori's leaders. My name is Riaz Gremory. I must warn you that the Gremory house is very close to the Demon King, so it is worth arguing with me." Kokabiel laughed at her and said with pure malice, "I wouldn't do something as stupid as talking to a Demon King. Although if I raped his younger sister so that his focus would be on me, it wouldn't be bad." This made Luffy look at him with eyes full of anger and shouted, "Hey, you disgusting pig, you better stay away from all my nakamas or I'll kick your ass." Kokabiel looked at him with a frown and said with disinterest, "One way or the other. We are going to destroy your city with the academy as a starting point. I guess that's how the leaders will appear looking for a war. Ahahaha, isn't my boss the best? His madness is the best. After all, he gave me these gifts," said Fried, revealing some swords in his trench coat. Everyone could see the Excalibur that he possessed, and Luffy noticed something crucial. "That's Arena's Excalibur. What did they do to her?" he shouted with fury. Kokabiel just smiled and threw a bundle of brown fur at him, which Luffy caught before he fell to the ground. Upon catching it, he was able to discover that it was Arena, all hurt but alive. Arena, what happened to you?" Luffy shouted upset. "It can't be," Nami said when she saw her. "Topper, do something for her," Sanji shouted, also upset. "Asia, do whatever it takes to cure her," Riaz shouted seriously. Topper approached the brunette to check on her, while Asia was in charge of healing her, and Luffy looked at the two unhappy people with eyes full of pure anger. "Sons of bitches," he shouted with hatred. "I say the same as you, Luffy, those damned people must pay for hurting such a beautiful lady," Sanji shouted with flaming anger. But Fried threw a blinding ball, and everyone couldn't see anything. When the light went away, no one was there, and Riaz said, "This is bad. We must go to the academy to stop them." And Luffy, "Sorry for asking you this, but I would like your entire crew to help us." "Can?" Luffy smiled and looked at his crew to say, "Guys, we must fight to save the city. It's not that different from when we fight to save a country like Wano or Alabasta, so I hope everyone is ready." His nakamas looked at him with a look full of determination, although Usopp was very afraid, and Nami approached him to say, "We're ready, Luffy. We have already faced a crew of beastly pirates capable of taking down anyone in the system that kept our world enslaved. Fighting a fallen angel and a mad priest will be no different." Luffy smiled at his words and looked at Riaz to say, "We are ready for battle, Riaz." Riaz smiled and said with determination, "In that case, let's go to the academy." Moments later, at the academy, everyone was already in the academy, and those from the student council were ready to put up a barrier in the academy. Then, Sona asked Riaz, "Riaz, did you call your brother to take care of this?" Riaz looked at her with a frown and said, "No way. If he called it himself, it would cause destruction because of what happens to me." But she heard how Akainu approached her and said, "I already called the Demon King, Riaz. May I know what you have done, Akainu? Why did you call him without my permission?" Riaz shouted angrily. "Riaz, this is a situation where we must rely on his power and ensure our victory. You can't put your pride above the lives of those who live in your territory, understand it?" Akainu shouted angrily. Riaz just groaned at the fact that his friend was lecturing her, and Nami watched this next to Robin. "Their friendship is very similar to ours. When I do something that puts the crew at risk, you always act as my voice of reason to correct my path," Nami said, looking at the scene with her eyes blank. Robin laughed amused since that was true. Then, Luffy looked at his team and said, "Well, I think we must be ready to face an enemy far beyond what we have faced. That's why I took action and told your grandfather what's happening so he can support us as reinforcement," Zoro said seriously. Luffy looked at him angrily for those words and shouted, "Do you realize what you have done? You've involved my grandfather in something that concerns us. Are you crazy?" Luffy, I understand that you don't want your grandfather to get into your problems, but if you want the people you care about most to stay safe, you must leave your pride behind and do whatever it takes to keep them safe. Use your head, Zoro shouted at him with total seriousness. Luffy ground his teeth when he heard his words because they were true and he had to resign himself. Okay, but only if things get complicated, he said with annoyance. Riaz looked at him amused to see how they were so similar, and that way they entered the academy to begin the battle. Later, everyone was at the main door having left Sona's team in the rear as backup at Sona's suggestion. Just like that, Ria's team and Luffy's team were preparing for battle. Luffy promoted himself to queen and just like that, they arrived at the sports field. Everyone looked outside and could see the Excalibur in the center of the field, releasing their power. Then they saw how the old man was in the center of the circle while he said, "I'm going to put the 5 Excalibur together in one." Everyone looked at him with hatred when they heard a voice above them saying, "Old man, how long does it take for the Excalibur to fuse?" They looked up at the sky to find Kokabiel in a chair in the sky looking at them with a mischievous smile. "This is not going to take even 5 minutes, Kokabiel," Bulba said with a smile. "Oh really? I'll leave it to you." "You better not fail me," said Kokabiel, looking at the group with evil. He looked at Riaz and asked, "Is Searches coming? Or will it be Serafol?" Riaz just smiled proudly and said, "I came, that's enough. Besides, there is a man with me who can fight you." He looked at Luffy with a smile and he returned it. Kokabiel smiled ecstatically and said, "Excellent, I will be able to have good entertainment. Now. They are going to have to fight against my pet that I took from hell." He snapped his fingers and from the depths of the darkness came a dull thud. From infernal flames, 3 enormous 3-headed dogs appeared before everyone. "It's the Cerberus," Akainu shouted seriously. "The guardians of hell. We are lost," Usopp shouted terrified. "They're just dogs without a leash. It will be a piece of cake to show them manners," Zoro said with a demonic smile. "They look more like hot dogs that I could simmer," Sanji said simply. "They look like that dog we saw in Thriller Bark and Tame," Luffy said with a smile. Kokabiel looked at them maliciously and said, "If they manage to survive my pets, then they will be able to face me. Cerberus, finish them off." The 3 dogs attacked everyone and the 2 leaders shouted, "Let's go everyone." Yes, everyone shouted. To fight against all their enemies, they divided themselves for the best opportunity. Riaz, Akainu, Nami, Hancock and Luffy against one of the Cerberus. Sanji, Kaneko, Jinbei and Frankie against others. Zoro, Brook, Kiba and Robin against a third. Asia, Chopper and Usopp would stay behind to provide support. But Sanji's group. Everyone attacked the puppy with Sanji and Kaneko launching kicks covered in armor, Haki, Frankie launching his missiles and Jinbei fighting with his fishman karate. Kaneko sent the Cerberus a kick covered in white flames, thanks to the fact that he managed to awaken them with the training with Sanji that hurt the being, and in this way, both hit the little dog in the neck with their legs. Then, Frankie launched his radical beam at him, and finally, Jinbei hit him with a water attack that sent him flying. Thus, Sanji and Kaneko gave it the final attack with their legs covered in white and blue flames, finally finishing off the Cerberus. But Zoro's group. The green-haired man launched himself against the dog to finish him off in an attack, while Kiba and Brook supported him. The 3 had to dodge a flare from the Cerberus, but moving at high speed, Zoro grabbed Enma and with the help of Kiba and Brook, cut him into 3 in one clean cut, thanks to Robin using his giant hands to hold him. In this way, the little dog ended up like cut meat. With Luffy's group. The fight was easy. Akainu and Nami formed a huge lightning bolt which Riaz combined with her power of destruction, forming the destroying lightning dragon, and thanks to Hancock kicking it with her fruit, it ended up turning into stone, so that Luffy would send it to the sky with one blow, and the lightning will destroy it completely. Seeing this, Kokabiel was furious, as he saw how the circle began to glow brightly, so he smiled evilly. "It's already late for you. They can't do anything to stop its end and the beginning of the war," he said evilly. "The 5 Excalibur are going to become one," Bulba said with joy. The divine light spread throughout the field, so everyone had to cover their faces, and when the lights went out, there was a shining holy sword in the center of the field. "It's beautiful. The result of my years of work is right before my eyes," said Bulba with emotion. Everyone watched as the energy was held in a bright magic circle, and Nami asked, "And now what are they going to do with that circle?" "It is not obvious. That energy can destroy the city, thanks to the power of the sacred sword," shouted a voice. Looking around, they saw Zenobia appear before them with a serious look. "How did you get here, Zenobia?" Luffy asked, surprised. "I knew they used this place to unite the Excalibur, and I hid the entire time." "Now get ready, he's moving," said the brunette looking forward. Everyone could see how Kokabiel stood up from his throne and looking at him with a smile full of desire for combat, he said. "Now, let's start this war." Chapter 15. Battle at the Academy. Kokabiel watched the Gremory group with an evil smile and said to Freed, "What's wrong, boss?" The madman asked with a smile. "Use the Excalibur on this circle. This will be your last entertainment. Fight with that Excalibur and finish them off." Kokabiel said with an evil smile. Yes yes. Wow. My boss uses people recklessly. But I am very honored to use Excalibur-chan yahaha, I'll just cut a few demons now, Fried shouted with a crazy smile. He held the sword in his hands and looked at everyone with eyes full of malice. Zenovia and Kiba were preparing to fight, but Bulba looked at Kiba and said, "You must be the guy from the Holy Sword Project who escaped. He asked me what had happened to you." Kiba looked at him angrily and shouted, "Bulba Galilei, you caused the death of all my companions, I'm going to destroy you right now." Bulba only laughed at his statement and taking out a blue crystal, he said, "More on those were just test subjects I used to accomplish this. In this crystal are the souls of all those inept people who served my purpose. With this, I can turn anyone into a wielder of a holy sword." Kiba looked at him with wide eyes, and Zoro approached him to say to Bulba, "You are a stupid. A swordsman is born with the ability to swing a sword. It is not made. Those sword bearers you have created are nothing more than a mockery to real swordsmen." Bulba looked at him with furious eyes and shouted, "Be quiet. A mere swordsman cannot see the greatness of a holy sword wielder. My project has brought many worthy wielders of the holy sword, and thanks to that, there will be more worthy wielders. You do not understand. As for that project survivor, you can keep this crystal. I don't need it anymore." He threw the crystal to Kiba, who caught it and could instantly feel the souls of his companions around him. Tears began to come out of his eyes, and while a beautiful song was heard in the area, Kiba said, "Friends, now we can be together again." At that moment, his sword began to glow and the jewel on Luffy's arm manifested to tell everyone, "That boy has reached balance breaker." Since the sacred gear responds to the feelings of its wearer, that boy's is responding to his connection with the souls of the crystal. Everyone looked at Kiba with some tears, and Zoro could feel Kiba's swordsman power getting stronger. In the end, a light shone throughout the place, and when it dissipated, everyone saw how Kiba held a sword very different from the ones he usually creates. "This is my balance breaker sword of betrayer. That's thanks to the souls of my friends and my group. In this sword resides the sacred power and the demonic power," Kiba shouted, showing his new sword. "A sacred demonic sword? That's impossible, but it does not matter. Nothing can against Excalibur-chan," Fried shouted madly. But then, Zenovia stood in front of him and said, "I can't stay behind my senpais. It's time to show my true power." She began to recite a chant, and a magic circle appeared before her from which a large blue chained sword emerged. Zenovia took it by the handle, and the chains broke so she could take it as she said, "This is my most powerful sword, Durandal." "That's impossible. We have not been able to create a carrier capable of using Durandal," Bulba shouted furiously. "That's because I'm a born carrier," Zenovia shouted with powerful eyes. Zoro looked at her with a smile while Fried just laughed madly and said, "Then I will face Durandal-chan too. This has become more exciting." He lunged at the two swordsmen to finish them off, but in one swift movement, the two swordsmen destroyed his Excalibur into pieces. "It's not possible," Fried shouted in disbelief. But he was cut off by Kiba in a quick movement, and the blonde only said, "Did you see that, friends? My sword could defeat Excalibur." Fried fell to the ground without being able to move, and at this, Bulba began to say, "This is not possible. Uniting holy and demonic power should not be possible, but if it really happened, then God." But he was pierced by a spear of light by Kokabiel himself, who said, "Bulba, you were useful. The fact that you managed to deduce that proves it. That's why I have to eliminate you." Then he looked at Luffy and said, "Sekiryuite, increase your power and give it to someone else." Luffy looked at him with serious eyes and looked at a certain person on the field. He went towards her as her gauntlet began to charge immense power in a short time. Boost, 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 boost. When he reached said person, he put his hand on his shoulder and said, "Come on, Riaz." She looked at him with wide eyes for a moment, but then she put on a determined face and said, "Come on." Luffy smiled and her jewel lit up as he said, "Transfer." Instantly, a large amount of demonic power filled the entire place, and everything was shaken by such power. "But ha good, the demonic power I can feel right now is that of a Mao-like demon. It seems like you have a great talent," dear Kokabiel shouted madly. Riaz looked at him with anger and putting her hand towards him, shouted, "Here we go." From his hand, a gigantic power of destruction was directed towards Kokabiel, and he with both hands placed in front of him, he tried to stop it. "Interesting, this is very interesting, sister of the Mao," Kokabiel shouted with pure ecstasy. In his hands, the light gathered and a power struggle of light and destruction began between the two of them. Both attacks jostled for supremacy until they ended in an explosion that sent everyone flying. When they got up, they noticed how both of them had their clothes in tatters and their hands were bloody. The Kendo then flew towards Kokabiel and sent a bolt of lightning which he had to block. "Are you going to be in my way? The one who inherited her power from Baraquiel?" he told her with a malicious smile. The Kendo looked at him with a fury he had never shown before and shouted, "Do not mention that name in my presence again." "Baraquiel?" Luffy asked confused. "He is one of Grigori's leaders. He is known as the bearer of the holy lightning," Zenovia explained. Nami looked at Akainu with concern and said, "What happened to you, Akainu? After overcoming Akaino's attack, Kokabiel went down to the ground and said to Rias maliciously, "You have good servants, Rias Gremory. Not only are they people who can become great characters, but they also already have a written reputation. You're the sister of Mao Lucifer, your swordsman the bearer of the holy demonic sword, that boy Sekiruyute, and the daughter of the fallen angel Baraquiel." At these words, everyone looked at Akainu with surprise, and Nami could see how she showed a face full of pain and resentment at the name of her father. "Akainu-chan is the daughter of a fallen angel?" Sanji asked in surprise. "Gee, that's an amazing team, Rias Gremory. However, they are not enough for them to be able to deal with someone like me, who has been in many wars," Kokabiel said evilly. But at that moment, Luffy lunged at him with his hockey-covered gauntlet and hit him in the face in fury. Kokabiel flew away, while almost everyone looked at him with open mouths, and Luffy just looked at him with furious eyes and shouted, "I do not care anything about that, you are attacking my home, and for that reason I will kick your ass." Kokabiel looked at him with curious eyes and then smiled maliciously and said, "You have impressive power. I would dare say that you could be the most powerful Sekiruyute in history. What are you saying? Do you want to join me to get what you want most?" This surprised most and Luffy only said with annoyance, "Never, I would never join you even if you offered me a lot of meat." "Oh, so meat is your greatest desire? And I see that you have many girls around. Then how about you come with me so that the best fallen angels can prepare the best Grigori meat for you dressed in just an apron," Kokabiel told him in a tempting way. "Oh, come on. Luffy isn't stupid enough to fall for something like," Rias said confidently. "Hey, how delicious is that meat you're offering me?" Luffy asked with meat-shaped eyes. "Does this have to be a joke?" Rias shouted in disbelief. "I'm sorry to tell you that's how you see it, Rias. Luffy's greatest weakness is meat and he has been on the verge of falling into that temptation a few times," Nami told him with a sigh. Then, she took a step forward and shouted, "Luffy, if you beat that idiot, Rias, Hancock and I will make you a lot of meat just for you in underwear." At this, Luffy stopped from his extra delicious meat fantasy and looked at Nami with serious eyes. "Are you telling me that you, Rias and Hancock will cook meat just for me? Meat prepared by the three of you? That's how it is? I'm sure that's worth much more to you than the tastiest meat they can offer you. What do you say, Rias, Hancock?" Nami said with a proud smile. "I would be delighted to prepare a delicious meat just for my beloved. I know that he will appreciate the meat prepared by his future wives much more than what that idiot is offering," said Hancock, also proud. Rias was able to figure out what Nami was doing and smiling proudly, she said, "For my good. If Luffy can finish off that bastard, I'll learn how to make such delicious meat that he'll be happy with. It's something I'll be happy to do for the win." With these words, the jewel in Luffy's gauntlet began to shoot a huge light as the black-haired man's power increased madly. Boost, 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 boost. Is he becoming more powerful just because the girls will make him meat? Ha ha ha, well, that's a good reason to become powerful, Sanji shouted with joy. Luffy looked at Kokabiel with eyes full of power and shouted, "Now I will finish you, idiot, I will kick your ass and then eat the delicious meat of Rias, Hancock and Nami, you are dead." Is he seriously becoming so strong just because he can eat meat prepared by those girls? "This has to be a joke," Kokabiel said with a roll of his eyes. Instantly, Luffy appeared in front of Kokabiel at high speed and hit him in the face, sending him to the ground, creating a crater. This caused the fallen angel great pain, but he did not have time to suffer as Luffy enlarged his fist and covering it with haki, shouted, "Gomu Gomu no Red Rock." His fist was covered in fire and hit Kokabiel's body, which remained on the ground in pain. But he stood up furious and shouted, "Are a bunch of children seriously causing me problems? I won't let some brats defeat me after the war in which God in the mask died." At these words, everyone froze and Asia asked without being able to believe it, "God is dead?" Kokabiel looked at her with a frown and said, "Oh, sure. It was supposedly the biggest secret we had to hide. I think he escaped from me." Asia was unable to breathe, but she could say with effort, "It's not possible." "So what about prayers and miracles?" "Hahaha. It is obvious that Michael is doing his job very well. Thanks to the system left by the God of the Bible, he has not stopped working with the acts of the deceased God. That is the reason why miracles and prayers still persist," Kokabiel said carelessly. Hearing this, Asia ended up passed out on the floor and Nami caught her worriedly. Asia, are you okay?" "I don't blame her. If it weren't for my willpower, I would have fallen too," said Zenobia, looking at Asia with pity. Luffy looked at Kokabiel with fury and shouted, "Hey, I don't care if God is alive or not, I follow my own path and nothing more. For that reason, I will not let you or anyone else threaten that path." Kokabiel looked at him with fury and preparing a spear in his hand, he said, "Damn brat, I'll show you the difference between us." However, they heard the sound of something approaching them from the sky. As they looked, they saw how a white beam plummeted, destroying the barrier and falling on Kokabiel with great force. "Looks like you're not so lucky, Kokabiel," said a young voice. When the smoke cleared, they could see a white suit of armor with two luminous wings on top of the fallen angel. Kokabiel looked at the newcomer with eyes full of hatred and said, "You the ephemeral dragon, what are you doing here?" The boy looked at him mockingly and said, "Azazel told me that he will take you back even if it is by force. You acted a little exaggerated." Kokabiel looked at him with anger at those words and shouted, "So that's how things are?" Azazel. But the boy hit him hard in the stomach and took him like a sack of potatoes to take him away. Before leaving, he looked at Luffy and said, "Sekiruite. I hope we meet again when you have become stronger, my destined rival." With that, he disappeared from the place in a flash of white, leaving everyone impressed. Luffy could only see the sky with serious eyes, and Riaz said to everyone, "Well, since everything is over, let's go back to the mansion to recover and return to classes." Everyone nodded and returned to the Highschool mansion after a big battle on the academy field. Chapter 16. New Life. A few days after the battle against Kokabiel, Luffy was with his group in the club room when a certain person appeared before them. "Hey, Sekiruite," said a blue-haired girl that everyone recognized. The blue-haired girl with green locks was there wearing the Ku Academy female uniform. "Zenovia, what are you doing here?" Luffy asked confused. At that moment, black wings emerged from her back, showing that she was now a demon. "Are you a demon now?" Nami asked a little jealous. "I found out that God is gone. So I became a demon like an abandonment of myself. I received a horse piece from Ria's Gremory. It seems I'm not that big, well Durandal is. So I had the opportunity to become a demon with a piece. And they also put me in this school. From now on, I am a second-year student and I am also a member of the Occult Research Club. I hope we get along well, Luffy-kun," said Zenovia with a crude imitation of a schoolgirl. "Please don't make such a cute sound with such a deep voice," Luffy said with a roll of his eyes. "Yes, you look like a Marimo with that expression," Sanji said annoyed. "What did you say, shitty cook?" Zoro yelled furiously. "What did you hear, fourth-rate swordsman?" Sanji shouted at him in the same way. And thus began a battle between the two that had to be stopped by Nami. But Reincarnator. "Riaz, is it okay to use such a valuable piece?" Luffy asked Riaz curiously. He understood that Zenovia had decided to change her life because of what she discovered, but he still didn't understand the reason why Riaz had accepted it. "Well. Having the Durandal wielder feels good. With this, it is a birth of the two swordsmen, her and Udo," Riaz said, enjoying the situation. Luffy looked at her with a smile. She had the same enthusiasm as him for getting new Nakama, and he could understand her. After all, how can you not be excited when you manage to recruit a person who has the potential to help you achieve your dream? It's a feeling that only people like the two of them can understand. "Yeah. I'm a demon now. I can't go back. No, maybe it's a good decision. But since God is gone, my life is a failure. But to serve under the hands of the demons, who were once my enemies, although she is the sister of the Demon King," Zenovia murmured with her head lowered. Everyone watched with a drop of sweat as she received damage while trying to pray quietly, and some thought she was very strange. Then, Luffy realized something. "Zenovia, where is Arena?" the curious man asked. Arena returned to the headquarters along with Bulba's corpse and the 5 Excalibur, including mine. The fragments that act as nuclei were recovered in that state. This is how the mission to recover them was carried out. If they have the cores, they can use alchemy to make the sacred sword again. Zenovia explained seriously. This surprised everyone, and Zoro looked at her curiously as he asked, "Is it okay for you to hand over your sword?" Zenovia looked at him seriously and said, "I have to give them Excalibur again just in case. Unlike Durandal, there are other users who could be chosen. Having Durandal is enough for me." When I realized the absence of God, they became silent. So I became a stranger for knowing the absence of God. The church hates outsiders and heresy. Even if that person is the wielder of Durandal, they are going to destroy it. In exactly the same way as the incident with Asia Argento. Saying this, she laughed at herself and Luffy sighed. If the church was so discriminatory as to eliminate their own people just for knowing a truth, they were not so different from the world government in their world. It is because of those things that he hates those who call themselves gods and the system that tries to impart control in the world. Arena was lucky. Even if she was not in the battle because of the injuries, she ended up not knowing the truth. She has a stronger belief than me. If she found out about God, I don't know what would have happened to her, Zenovia continued with some pain. Luffy felt bad for his childhood friend, thinking that if the church decided to tell him the truth, she would suffer much more than anyone else. That would mean that her entire life was a lie and that everything she believed in was only full of lies. However, she was very disappointed that she turned me into a demon. I couldn't tell him that it was due to the absence of God. We had an awkward goodbye. Maybe we'll be enemies the next time we meet, the brunette concluded sadly. Some of the Mugiwaras understood how she felt since she happened to them on occasion. Then, Riaz looked at the entire club and said, "The church contacted us, the demons. More precisely, they spoke to the Demon King about this incident. They said, We would like to make contact with you due to the unclear and dishonest actions of the fallen angels, although we feel dissatisfied about this. He also apologized to Balba because it was his mistake for letting him escape in the past. Luffy and his group rolled their eyes, having seen in his world the same method of trying to shift blame away from governments. However, this school is truly terrifying. Because there is another younger sister of a demon king who attends this school. Zenobia said with a complicated face. Given this, everyone wondered who that sister was and what demon king is connected to her. Luffy looked at Rias for confirmation, and she only nodded to imply that it was true. The truth about this incident was sent from God and from the demons to the viceroy of fallen angels, Azazel. The theft of the Excalibur was an action taken only by Kokabiel. The other leaders knew nothing. He planned it to break the tension in the three factions. Because he tried to start another war, he was frozen in the casino for all eternity. Rias explained with a sigh. This left some with their mouths open. Those who had researched the factions of religions, such as Luffy, Nami and Robin, had read about the casino and had discovered that it was not a pretty place at all. Even though it ended with the intervention of the ephemeral dragon. They stopped the commotion made by one of them by sending a person from his organization, Rias said, somewhat annoyed. Wait, so that boy in white armor was sent by the fallen angels? Nami asked in surprise. That's how it is. As I understand it, he is under Azazel's tutelage and only acts under his orders. Rias explained seriously. Luffy narrowed his eyes at this information. That boy looked like he was very powerful and that he could match him in a battle. Luffy knew that if he was sure the two of them would end up fighting, his fight would shake everyone. There will also be a meeting between the representatives of angels, demons and fallen angels. Apparently there's something Azazel wants to talk about. I heard that maybe Azazel will apologize about Kokabiel. Although it is suspicious that Azazel apologizes, Rias said with displeasure. So the ruler of the fallen angels wants to apologize. He seems like someone with a big ego. Although I am surprised that the three representatives of the three major factions meet. It's as if in our world, the leaders of the pirate, marine, and revolutionary factions did the same thing, Luffy said mockingly. Rias laughed at his words and continued explaining. Well, we were also invited to the meeting. We have to report the incident at the meeting because we have participated. Really? The Mugiwara shouted in surprise. That's how it is. I'm worried about the ephemeral dragon though. He will be at the meeting on Azazel's side, and I have heard that he is about the fourth or fifth strongest of all the people including the Grigori leaders. Although I would dare say that you would be in a similar position to him, Luffy. Rias said, looking at Luffy worried. Luffy could only sigh. If that boy was the fourth or fifth strongest, that put him in a very even position with him. In his world, he was one of the four strongest pirates after defeating Kaido, and if he had to think of a position among the strongest characters in the world, he would be like fourth or fifth on the list. He knew that the first three were him, Blackbeard and Shanks, so he would be fighting for fourth or fifth place with Akainu and his father. In that sense, he didn't feel so inferior to his white rival in this world. Ahahaha, that shouldn't be worrying, said a voice in the room. Everyone looked at Ria's chair to see D sitting with a big smile. Everyone shouted in surprise. The god of D's increased his smile and said with excitement, do not worry. I will attend that meeting as a representative of the Mugiwaras and explain how I brought Luffy and his Nakamas into this world. However, I will take Garp as my bodyguard to that meeting. Everyone looked at him in amazement and Rias asked him, will you really attend the meeting? Don't you think leaders feel uncomfortable with a god from a world different from ours? Of course they wouldn't feel that way. In fact, they will be eager to know everything about my world and how things are going there. Now, I have also come for two very important things. One of them is to give a dawn gear to one of the Mugiwaras and I will give it to Robin. D said getting up from his seat. He approached a black-haired woman and placed his hand on her so that a violet light covered her. After a while, Robin felt some images in his head and extended her hand to create a book with some petals on the cover. The book? Rias asked curiously. It is not an ordinary book. It is Dawn O'Hara, a book with which she can create what she imagines by writing in it. With this, she can serve as support by creating items they can use or fantasy allies to help them. Her balance breaker allows her to introduce anyone to an area of a world of stories in her book. I thought it would be a good power for her. D explained with a big smile. Everyone was impressed by such power, and Robin proved it by writing the word katana in the book, making a normal Japanese katana appear before everyone. Then she erased the word, and the katana disappeared from everyone's sight. It seems that what I believe only remains as long as the word remains written. I like my new power. Thank you, D-san. Robin said with great joy. It is an incredible power, almost at the height of the gods. I wish you were in my group. Rias said a little jealous. Oh no. She will be in my party when she is king and she has my pieces. I'm sorry Rias, but I won't let anyone have my archaeologist, said Luffy with an amused smile. Rias laughed at how jealous Luffy was of his nakamas and said, "That's why I like you a lot, because you love your nakamas with as much zeal as an older brother." Then, D raised his hand towards the magic circle area and created a circle like the one he always makes when he brings someone over. "Okay, now I'll bring you someone else to be with you. And I think I'll bring someone who has been missing one of you for a long time," he said with a mischievous smile. "Who are you talking about?" Zoro asked curiously. The circle shone brightly, and before everyone was a girl who made the swordsman open his eyes. "What do I do here? Where I am? How did I get here?" asked a girl with a sword and glasses in her eyes. Tashigi, Zoro shouted, running towards her and hugging her. Indeed, the Navy captain Tashigi was before all of them, and she looked at Zoro with clear surprise. "Urano, Zoro. Why are you hugging me? What's going on here?" she asked without understanding anything. "It does not matter, I'm happy to see you, I wanted to be before you to tell you what I feel," Zoro said seriously. Tashigi looked at him with clear surprise and asked, "What are you talking about? Aren't you saying that?" "Yeah, that I have come to love you, Tashigi, I love you," said the green-haired man with some tears. The swordswoman couldn't believe what she heard, and she pushed him away a little to shout at him, "But we are enemies, you're a pirate and I'm a marine, we can't be together." Zoro looked at her carefully and noticing something, said, "But you feel the same way about me, don't you? I can see that you are about to cry, the tears want to come out of your eyes, and it is because you feel the same. I don't care what we are, I only care that I love you and that you love me too." At these words, Tashigi couldn't stand it anymore and she threw herself into Zoro's arms while she cried. This brought tears to everyone present and Ria said while he cried, "It's beautiful. A forbidden love. A pirate and a marine in love who have to be separated by their duty, but their love overcomes that barrier." At this, the two swordsmen separated with a blush and Tashigi asked again, "But what's happening here? I learned that they had disappeared and that the Navy had presumed them dead as well as Mugiwara. How come you are in this strange place?" I'll explain everything to you calmly," Zoro told her, taking her somewhere else. While Zoro explained to Tashigi everything about his new adventure, D looked at the others and said, "Well, I'll go for now. You will see me again at the faction meeting to represent the Mugiwaras and their allies. See you." And just like that, he disappeared, leaving them alone. When he left, Rias clapped her hands to get attention and said, "Now. Since everyone has returned once again, we are going to start club activities again." "Yes," everyone shouted. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.